Good morning. I'm Linda Simmons, and I'm the TriMet Board President, and I want to welcome everyone to the TriMet Board of Directors meeting for May 25, 2022. We thank you for once again joining us online, and we're sorry about that, but we've returned to a digital format this week due to an increase in the COVID-19 cases and hospitalizations. I appreciate everyone's flexibility. This morning, as always, though, we begin with a public forum. And for the viewers that are participating today, the community forum is an opportunity for you to share your thoughts, concerns, and feedback about TriMet and our service. We ask everyone who would like to provide a comment to please use the icon on your screen to raise your hand. And when it's your turn, you'll be called on to provide comments. We also ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. So we'll go ahead and begin, and Kimberly will invite the first speaker.
Okay, good morning, President Simmons. Our first speaker this morning is Doug Allen. Mr. Allen, your microphone is unmuted, and I'm starting the clock now.
Good morning.
Good morning, President Simmons and directors. My name is Doug Allen. I'm a transit user and also speaking on behalf of Bus Riders Unite, and retired after 35 years with TriMet's Service Planning and Scheduling departments. Today, you're scheduled for a presentation by the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program on their locally preferred alternative. And next month, you're scheduled to vote on that LPA. But are you being told of the significant risks in moving forward into the federal NEPA environmental analysis with just one very expensive bridge concept? Like the political risk that the Oregon legislature can't stomach the huge and likely understated cost, the legal risk from environmental opponents challenging the lack of alternatives, political risk from Metro or the city of Portland if the EIS fails to show adequate progress on climate goals, political risk from opponents of tolls, federal approval risk, especially the U.S. Coast Guard, which is expected to require greater river clearance than the 116 feet being requested. The cost of this mega project is a big part of all these risks. The best way to mitigate this risk is to also carry forward one or more less expensive design concepts through the NEPA analysis, so that in the end, it is more likely that at least one acceptable LPA will remain to be selected. And how about the cost burden that this LPA will place on TriMet? All the climate benefits, virtually all, come from this project through reduced motor vehicle travel. Tolls by themselves are burdensome, and TriMet and CTRAN will need to provide attractive combinations of bus and rail service to Vancouver and Clark County, something that doesn't exist now. Today's 15-minute frequency of the Yellow Max line just won't cut it. And if less freeway congestion is achieved through tolling, Max will not provide competitive travel times to downtown Portland. CTRAN must provide frequent express bus service to downtown Portland, and TriMet must provide frequent MAX connections to bus lines throughout the region. This will cost both TriMet and CTRAN a considerable amount of money that is not funded by the project. Some portion of toll revenues should subsidize this service, and ODOT should provide bus lanes, not shoulders, on I-5 to ensure speed and reliability for express buses. Along with the increased service is the need to fix capacity limits at the Steel Bridge. Any additional Yellow Line service will impact existing blue, red, and green line capacity. What is the capital project plan to allow for increased Yellow Line operation without a negative impact on the rest of the system? And where will the funding for that project come from? We ask you not to approve the recommended LPA as the only alternative to be advanced through the NEPA process. Please insist on one or more alternatives that are much less expensive. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug. Kimberly? Has anyone else signed up?
Yes, our next speaker this morning is John Carr. Mr. Carr, I have just unmuted your microphone.
Welcome, John.
Actually, President Simmons, I apologize. It looks like his connection may have dropped. So we will go on to the next speaker, and if Mr. Carr is able to rejoin.
Okay.
Oh, actually, sorry, it looks like he's back again. Just one moment here. No, and I'm sorry. It looks like he has disappeared once again. So I'm sorry. I do not know what is happening. I am going to go on here to Lee Helfand.
Okay, thank you.
Your
Welcome,
microphone is
Lee.
now unmuted.
Good morning, all. Excuse me. Yeah, so I have quite a few comments to make. First, I want to say thank you for having an online option for participation again, especially as COVID cases ramp up. And I also hope that in the future there will be an online participation option. We know that a lot of disability justice advocates and other community members think that a online option is actually more accessible. And we've seen folks working at hybrid meetings. So if that is something that could be considered in the future when we do return to in-person, I think that would be really awesome. I also just want to echo a lot of Doug's comments. I encourage y'all to look at the Just Crossing Alliance website, which raises a lot of those same issues. And a lot of community members do feel like this process for the bridge replacement is being rushed. So I do encourage y'all to look into some of the conversation around that if you haven't already. And yeah, I do want to comment and just say, kind of on another note, that a lot of community members have reached out to the new general manager for a meeting. And so, especially with the Getting There Together coalition, I'm not sure where that is at, or if that conversation is continuing, or if there's something in the calendar. But I know there has been an offer to meet with community members. I would just encourage that to be more of a priority, especially because a lot of our community advocates are excited for you to be the general manager and would love to make more connections, talk about different issues that we're seeing. So I would just encourage that to be more of a priority. And I think that is all I had to say. So I'll give back the rest of my time.
Thank you. Thank you, Lee. Kimberly,
Okay.
has anyone else signed up?
Yes, Mr. Carr is with us now, so I am unmuting his microphone. Mr. Carr, go ahead.
Can
Welcome,
you hear me
Mr.
now?
Carr. Yes.
Hi. Great, thanks. Well, good morning, Dr. Simmons, Vice President Bauman, and directors. My name is John Carr. I'm the Land Use Chair for the South Tabor Neighborhood Association. Our neighborhood sits between Southeast Division and Powell, from Southeast 52nd to Southeast 82nd. And I also served as the chair of the Division Transit Project Community Advisory Committee.
Okay.
I spoke to you at the start of your March board meeting to ask for an update on the TriMet-led Powell Division Corridor Safety Improvements Project. This is a series of enhanced pedestrian crossings at key spots along Southeast Powell and Southeast Division, from Cesar Chavez to Southeast 151st.
Mhm.
General Manager Dessous responded that he would look into it and brief you at your next meeting, but April was a busy meeting and it came and went with no mention of the project. So I hope today is different. The Powell Division Safety Improvements Project was funded years ago to improve safety and access to transit at a series of intersections that had seen several major injuries and fatalities in the decade prior. Sadly, this year alone, there have been 4 traffic deaths within a block of these same intersections.
Mhm.
We understand this is a small project in the larger scheme of things. It's a small item in the TriMet budget, but it's a big one for us and for our neighbors in Foster Powell. More than half of the 13 crossings are at our boundaries. And these deaths are happening where we live and where our kids have to cross to get to their schools. Given the focus scope, we thought that this would have been completed on schedule in 2019 or even 2020, yet construction has still not even begun.
Mhm.
So what we hope to hear from TriMet today is that this has been flagged as an urgent priority. If not, we urge the board to ask leadership and staff to fast track the project. Lean on PBOT, ODOT, the FHA, and the Portland Bureau of Planning and Sustainability to prioritize their involvement as well, and begin construction before the new division line launches this fall. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, John. I would ask that if you have time and can stay on to when the general manager provides his update, I'm going to ask him to make some comments about your concerns. And because I know that he has expressed, I've heard about what the plan is moving forward. And but I can't recall whether it was at a board meeting or if it was at a private meeting with the general manager. So I'll ask the general manager to speak to your concerns.
Great, I appreciate that.
Mhm. Kimberly, has anyone else signed up?
Yes, President Simmons, we have one last speaker today, Joe Kunzler. And Mr. Kunzler, your microphone is unmuted.
Welcome, Joe.
Hey, thanks for having me today. Joe Kunzler here. I spoke to you before the pandemic about operator safety, and I have to say, I rode your TriMet to get around during the Oregon International Air Show, and your system is so much more improved. You have newer buses. You thankfully have invested in operator safety shields. There were no issues on the bus whatsoever, on the buses and the Max whatsoever. The system was incredibly reliable. I was able to use Transit app on my not so smartphone, and it told me within a minute of when your buses would be there, especially on the 72, where I got an Airbnb within a quick walk. I was even able to use the Route 72 to go down to Krispy Kreme, grab some donuts, and then have a video call, and then go watch the rehearsals for the air show. So really, really nice system that you've invested in. I also have to say that the last day before I left, I of course had to make a stop at the Tillicum Crossing because I don't really think you can visit Portland without going by the Tillicum Crossing. It is without a doubt the best architecture best bridge I've ever seen. And I hope that Sound Transit copies it for our projects up here in Washington State. And I do have one gripe, and that is your hop pass. I ended up using cash to pay my fare because and the paper passes because the hop car, I went to a Fred Meyer and I went to a Safeway. They did not have an adult fare card available. So I had to use cash because you guys don't mail fare anymore and all that.
That's helpful information, Joe. Thank you.
Okay, President Simmons, we do have another speaker.
Okay.
Thomas Craig is joining us next. Mr. Craig, I have just unmuted your microphone.
Thank you.
Hello, Thomas.
Hello. Thank you, President Simmons and directors. I'm Thomas Craig from North Portland off the 75. I'm a transit rider and member of Opal's Bus Riders Unite. I'm here to testify that the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program locally preferred option that you'll hear about today and you'll vote on next month presents major risks to TriMet and could distract the region from investing in the infrastructure that your agency needs to fulfill its mission. The LPO is a very, very expensive and does not need to be. The only stakeholder request that requires a structure so large and expensive is the addition of the so-called auxiliary lanes, which I believe everyone in this room understands are in fact just additional freeway lanes, expanding capacity, inducing further VMT, and demonstrably working in opposition to our regional climate and equity goals. Of all the jurisdictions involved, which should all be opposed to major capacity expansion as a matter of climate science and equity goals, TriMet should have a uniquely strong opposition to the current LPO because there is absolutely nothing in it for you as an agency. Sure, there's light rail to Vancouver, but that is every bit as much a risk and a cost for you as it is an opportunity. Can you run the frequency to make the service competitive with driving? How much will that cost to operate? How will the MAX network be reconfigured to allow for the capacity traveling south towards your bottleneck at the steel bridge? Will a new steel bridge or other Willamette crossing be built? Or will there be an east side of the river MAX line connecting to OMSI for faster north-south trips? Those could solve the capacity issue, but they're also very expensive projects. Will the city of Portland, the counties and Metro be willing to help you make those investments when they're trying to find money for this IBR program? Your ask to the IBR program can be very clear and very simple. go back and come up with 2 other feasible and actually different options, both of which need to cost less than $3 billion, and one of which should be the cheapest possible bridge replacement that enables light rail across the river. That doesn't force the region to go in any particular direction. It would just leave options for the region open. What could you and CTRAN together do with $2.5 billion if we cut those costs from a wasteful bridge project? We're talking about 2 entire years of operating and capital expenditures for the 2 agencies. There are thousands of significant problems you could solve for that kind of cash. If instead, we let the region spend $2.5 billion on an unnecessary freeway expansion over the Columbia River, shackling you with service that you aren't compensated for, you'll just have more problems to solve and fewer resources to work with. We ask that you not approve the recommended LPA as the only accessible alternative to be advanced through the NEPA EIS process. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Kimberly, if that truly was the last community member who wished to address the board, I will go ahead and close the public forum and open the business meeting. So we will start with board reports. And I'd like to first invite Director Edwards to provide an update from the latest meeting on the Committee of Accessible Transportation. Director Edwards?
Thank you, Chairman Simmons. We had a lively meeting last week. We started out with reports that were given by staff. And Eileen Collins first shared with that Broadway Cab is having some concerns as TriMet regarding shortages of drivers. And that's been the same problem that we've had, of course, with TriMet as well. Jonathan Lewis informed the committee of staffing challenges regarding the lift operators. And that's been in spite of the fact that we've had a bounty of $1,500 and $2,500 bonuses for those lift operators. Steve Hex from Broadway Cab also gave a report. He now has spare vehicles. He's in a better shape than he was before. And he's had a net gain of 2 wheelchair drivers, which really makes a huge difference because we had drivers before that weren't able to assist folks that were wheelchair bound. There was a very lively discussion when Lonnie Nielsen gave his report, and he gave a very comprehensive report on the wraps that we have on buses, and it was a very good discussion, and there was several suggestions that came out of that. There was some concerns about the wraps, the placement of the wraps on the windows, and the wraps in general as regarding people being able to see out of the windows. And so 3 suggestions came out of that. One was that there would be an electronic trigger for stop alerts. In other words, when folks came up to a stop, somehow there would be something that would trigger it. So there'd be an announcement that would be consistent so that folks would know where their next stop was coming. Also, the window tent, exploring to see if there's an opportunity to have tinted windows that are sensitive to light. So in other words, because the windows that we currently have on the buses and the trains are tinted, and they're tinted, and at nighttime it's very dark, and there's security issues that become obvious when those windows are really dark like that, and also with the wraps that cover the windows. The third option, or the third suggestion, I should say, was using the top third of the windows. Currently, the bottom third of the window is used for wraps, and that's challenging for folks that are again wheelchair bound, or folks even when they're sitting in their seats on the transport. So if the top third was used, that would facilitate better vision for the riders that are on the buses and on the trains as well. Pat Williams gave a report on safety and security, and he really raised a huge issue that we're having, and it's gotten more prevalent of late, and that's the smoking of fentanyl and heroin, primarily on the trains, but also on the buses as well. And this creates a great risk to passengers because people are doing illicit drugs, and no telling what they might do or what they're going to do under the influence of these drugs, as well as the behavior prior to using the drugs. But Mr. Williams outlined steps that can be taken in order to alert the authorities and alert folks that this is going on. That keeps the passengers safe as well, so they're not putting themselves in harm's way when they're trying to report these behaviors that are going on. So that pretty much summarizes my report. Any questions that someone may have?
Yeah, thank you. That's an excellent report, Director Edwards. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'm going to then move to the next report, which is going to be provided by Director Lewis, an update on the crash committee. Director Lewis.
Good morning, and thank you, Director Simmons. The TriMet's Crash Advisory Committee is tasked with reviewing and understanding crashes, especially those crashes that involve TriMet, revenue vehicles that result in injury, fatality, and how crashes can be avoided. The 7-member committee meets biannually, and in 2021, we met in November and most recently, May 9th. For our November meeting, 17 crashes were available for review from June 2020 through November 2020. Our committee reviewed 5 crashes, 0 on bus. Those 5 were on the rail. They consisted of 4 pedestrian crashes, 1 vehicle crash, and out of the 5 crashes, there were 2 fatalities. For our May meeting, 10 crashes were available for review from December 2020 until May of this year. The committee reviewed 6 crashes. Crash 29 from the last group was also included. 0 bus and 6 were rail. 3 pedestrian crashes, 3 vehicle crashes, and out of the 6, 2 fatalities. To date, the crash committee has been provided with 55 crashes for review and have selected 21 for review and discussion. 4 of those were bus crashes, 17 rail crashes, and of those 21, 14 pedestrian crashes, 7 vehicle crashes, and 5 fatalities. My report does not include the 2 max collisions that just recently happened. Our thoughts are with everyone involved in these crashes, knowing how traumatic that these types of incidences can be for our operators. They are provided support and counseling resources to help them navigate this time in their life. That concludes my report. Any questions?
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. A question I have, having served also on the crash committee, is, one of the things when you review these things is interventions that TriMet can take to reduce the likelihood of these kinds of incidents. And how's the committee doing in terms of that? I mean, I know that these things are studied extensively by lots of agencies, federal, state, and local, and it's very troubling. But I'd be curious to know if you have 1 or 2 examples of things that we could do to ensure that fewer of them happen.
Okay. In our November meeting, which was a smaller meeting, 2 of the crashes, those members of the committee did go actually to the site, look at lighting, and actually review the sighting of how, the speed of the train, because we're provided all different various types of camera viewpoints. And so they went at the time, since it was not too far, to look at any possible suggestions. And those suggestions usually are lighting, but a lot of it is auto errors, racing the train, and so some of them cannot be mitigated on TriMet's part. For our May meeting, that meeting consisted of Director and can't remember, I call him Andrew, more members of the safety committee that were present to answer our questions. And so there were quite a few members of TriMet to help us walk through some of the issues. But for the most part of the crashes, they were consistent with cars not paying attention, being on the phone. We do note we could ask or have more police reports finalizing, or even the ones that were fatalities, to see what consisted of the situation with the person ending their life. Was there drugs involved? And so we've asked for the coroner's reports going forward that can be part of our packet. So it's at best a variety of types of issues, but so far when it does look or appear to be something that we as TriMet can correct, it happens and happens immediately.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Does anyone else have any comments or questions for Director Lewis?
I have a question.
Yes, Kath.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lewis, for this. This is a great update. I'm curious because we don't hear of the crash committee report very often, and you mentioned the committee doesn't meet as often as other committees. I'm just trying to remember. Was this part of it was a bill that passed by the legislature? Okay, I was just trying to remember.
Yes.
What it was and how it got established. So so thank you. And then the committee members that are assigned, are they appointed by, I guess, who are they and how do they get appointed? I'm just curious what that participation looks like.
I'm fairly new. Linda, Director Simmons, can you help? Because I replaced your
what I recall, and possibly someone on staff can help with this. What I recall is the legislature requires certain people with certain backgrounds to serve on the committee, and there's and TriMet has one board member that serves on the committee, but there are people that work for PBOT. There are people that work for various agencies. So if there is anyone on staff that can help me out on this, I don't have that. I just know that the legislature, the legislation indicated these types of people with these backgrounds had to be on, and they were primarily external. Here, I see this. The committee consists of 7 members. Where did it go? It disappeared on me.
It's okay, President Simmons. I'll read through that, but thank you. I just wanted to ask that question. And
But it's an excellent question, and now I do have it. So it says it's established, consists of 7 members appointed by the TriMet manager. When selected committee members, the general manager shall seek members with a variety of backgrounds, including expertise or experience in the transportation safety. The members must include 1 member who is an expert in transportation safety, engineering, design, or planning, including the efforts by the City of Portland to eliminate transportation-related deaths and serious injuries in Portland. 1 member who's an advocate for public transportation. 1 member who's an advocate for pedestrians or bicyclists. 1 member who's an advocate for transportation safety. 1 member who is an advocate for elderly persons or persons with disabilities. 1 member who's a state or government official with responsibilities for transportation infrastructure, and 1 member who is a TriMet board member.
great. Thank you. That's super helpful.
Yes, it is. Thank you for the question. Any other questions? All right, then we're going to move on to the next report, and that's going to be provided by Vice President Irish Bauman on the Finance and Audit Committee. Director Bauman?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone. The Finance and Audit Committee met this morning just before the board meeting and we had just 3 items on our agenda, but we filled our hour. The first item was a review of changes to the TriMet budget since the preliminary budget was approved, and that those changes are going to be covered later in the board meeting, but I'll just mention very briefly that the changes result from, among other things, looking at reforecasting revenues and actual spending. Some of the changes are increased projected passenger revenues, some STIF funding changes, and expenditure adjustments due to new hires and salary changes, and also changes to the cost of fuel. So again, the board will hear more about that later in this meeting. Next, Kara Fitzpatrick introduced TriMet's new auditors, Eide Bailey. This is the first time that they've provided an audit, or that they will provide an audit for TriMet's financial statements. So we had a presentation from one of the project partners, Ahmad Garibay, and he said that they are now working on the audit. The auditors started work in May. They're going to spend 2 weeks on site at TriMet, and they may return later for more on-site work, but they also will work remotely, because the agency, they said, has done a good job of getting the relevant documents onto the portal for their review. So they're going to do an audit of the financial statements as of June 2022. They're going to review internal processes and especially review expenditure of COVID-related federal funds and STIF funding. They will also look at internal controls. We should expect that their work will end in September, and they will issue an opinion in November, and we'll hear more about it then. And the final item on the agenda was a report on the Interstate Bridge Replacement Project. And again, the board will be hearing about that towards the end of our meeting today, but we had a preview, and we had quite a few folks from the TriMet team and also from the IBR team participating. We heard, this kind of echoes some of the public testimony you just heard. There's a locally preferred alternative that's been proposed. This is part of the environmental review of the project. Some of the elements of the LPA include, as you may know, light rail along the I-5 alignment. We heard that there's polling and other studies have shown a high demand for transit between Vancouver and Portland, and light rail is the preferred mode. Community feedback has shown that folks are concerned about dealing with congestion and having more transit options. At our next meeting in June, the board will be asked to approve certain conditions that will be attached to the locally preferred alternative. And so stay tuned for that. And again, you'll be hearing more about this topic later in the meeting. And that is my report.
Thank you, Director Bauman. And does anyone have any questions right now on the report? Okay, thank you so very much. So that now we're going to move on then to Director Kim, who's going to give us an update on the Metro Policy Advisory Committee. Director Kim?
Yes, here's a report on the April MPAC meeting. At the April meeting, there was a briefing to MPAC on the climate-friendly and equitable communities rulemaking by the Department of Land Conservation and Development. The statewide rulemaking includes the new requirements for transportation system planning to take climate impacts into account, and new parking reform policies to limit parking minimums within half a mile of frequent service transit corridors. These rules were temporarily adopted by the Land Conservation and Development Commission last week, with final consideration to take place this upcoming July. And Metro staff also briefed MPAC on the work plan for the 2023 Regional Transportation Plan update. I understand our TriMet staff are working with Metro and partners on updates to this regional plan, specifically to ensure that policies, programs, and projects align with TriMet's interests to expand safe, frequent, and reliable transit service. MPEC also received an update on Metro's garbage and recycling facilities plan as well. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Kim. I don't see any hands raised for any questions for you. So we
I've got
will.
a hand. Sorry, I'm talking through my mask. I've got a hand.
Oh, it doesn't show on the screen.
Oh, sorry, I'm
So-
just raising it in the camera.
Oh, okay. And I didn't see you because I can't see all of us. But okay, go ahead, Director Gonzalez.
Thank you, President Simmons. Director Kim, I was really curious as to some of the insights or highlights that were brought forward in the waste regional plan. Is there, with the solid waste regional planning that you just mentioned, is there any major infrastructure project, any major changes that they're talking about?
I'm not certain, Ozzy. To be frank, we've got this wasn't the first time we've gotten updates a few times, but if helpful, what I can do is follow up with, specific on-point questions asking Metro for, I think, what are specific, upcoming projects that we can anticipate in connection with this facilities plan. Would that be helpful? And I can follow up with you in the coming weeks.
Gracias, clásico. That would be great. I appreciate that, Director Kim. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
I will do that. And in fact, I will get those responses to President Simmons so she can circulate accordingly.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so that was an excellent report. I appreciate that. And so now we're going to return to Director Lewis. We've got her very busy. She's going to give us an update on the Reimagining Public Safety Committee. Director Lewis?
Thank you again, Director Simmons.
We just like seeing you.
The Reimagine Public Safety Advisory Committee met on May 17th. It was well attended, and we appreciate the committee members' commitment and their time to this advisory committee. Director Pat Williams provided our monthly safety report, which included riders using the rail system, smoking the intoxicants. Director Edwards gave a good overview on this report. It's probably similar, and so yes, the agency is addressing this because it is a health and safety hazard for riders, and including, the staff. Director John Gardner provided an update on the RFP process regarding the micro grants for our community-based training initiatives. The advisory committees are engaged and participate in the scoring. And I want to give just a quick shout out to Celeste, to Anna Diana, Manish, and Adam. They are part of the advisory who sit and help the TriMet staff with the scoring. Current scores are still being tabulated, and we hope to have some final scores by the end of the month. We continue to seek training for there's 2 categories. And if you know of anyone or any nonprofit or organization that can help us with the training in these 2 areas, please let us know. They are trauma-informed care and resource referral approaches. Please contact Marissa Clark. We are still waiting and would love any referrals for those 2 training categories. We have been encouraging our advisory members to take ride-alongs, and they're stepping up. Zach Lindahl, one of our advisory members, gave an excellent overview of his ride-along with the safety response team. And I'd just like to quote that he says, he felt that the team, the safety response team, because we have many other teams, support the community in a way he had never seen before. And he encourages all of our committee members to participate, and including board members, to do a ride-along on the system. As the committee moves through their work on the Reimagine initiatives, we began the work this month on Initiative 6.4, which states implement quarterly reporting of security on the system as part of the General Manager's board briefings. The committee worked through some possible report elements for each of the groups, and some of the members had pointed out that they would like some information to be part of this report on resolutions of the cases from the district attorney's office, and also additional information on racial demographics of those prosecutions and more information on the exclusions. We have our work cut out for us. The members will be sharing this template with their organizations to gather more information, and we'll be reviewing all feedback and working continually into June. Special thank you to Jessica Stanton, who assists in facilitating our discussions, and to all TriMet staff, yay, who work and assist behind the scenes to promote the work of the Reimagined Public Safety Advisory Committee. That concludes my last report.
Director Lewis, we have heard from one viewer that traumainformedoregon.org is a potential resource for one of the training areas that you referenced.
Awesome. Okay, I know either Director John or Marissa or on can make note of that.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. Thank you so very much. Are there any comments or questions? Yes, Director Edwards.
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman Simmons. I had a question regarding the report that you get back from your requesting from the DA, adding the racial demographics. Are age and gender in that report as well?
It will be.
Thank you.
It was just an area that was brought up, but I'm sure when we meet in June, we will define those demographics, and usually age is definitely, and race, the whole gamut.
Thank you.
Director Gonzalez.
Thank you, President Simmons. Director Lewis, I'm thrilled at this idea of the ride-along, and I would love to request that we get information as board members on how to take advantage of that opportunity. And I would love to push this back to the committee to consider expanding that to invite either targeted school groups or community organizations beyond that committee, because there's a lot of folks in the community that I think would benefit from having that experience.
Thank you. That's an excellent idea. I will bring that back to the committee. That would be a great way to expand and especially highlight our safety committee that's new. Thank you.
Seeing no other hands raised, we will now move to the next report, which is going to be provided by Director Way, and she's going to provide an update on the Transit Equity Advisory Committee. Director Way.
Great. Thank you, President Simmons. Hello, board members. So we had a pretty robust TIAC meeting this month. First, the staff provided us with several important updates. One is the new hiring bonus, starting hourly rate for drivers. On a personal note, I actually was grabbing some coffee in downtown Milwaukee just this week, and I ran into a new TriMet bus driver who just started about a month ago into the job, and she is also has joined ATU. So I kind of just gave her a little pep talk and just thanked her so much for joining our organization. And so hopefully those recruitments will continue to pick up. As many of you heard, we also have a recognition and a celebration every month of different ethnicities, different national holidays. And so May is Asian American, is nationally recognized as Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. There was a bus wrap that was designed by a community artist named Alex Chu, and the original artwork can be seen at the 82nd Max Station. I have seen it and it's beautiful. And I just also wanted to, there is a caveat, Director Edwards, thank you so much for also lifting up some of the issues around visibility that you had mentioned in your report around, around the bus wrap and how that could, it could be a beautiful artwork, but it could also provide some accessibility challenges for some of our community members. So I'm sure we can provide a good, happy solution on that, but thank you for raising some of those points in your report. We also heard about the 24 long-range battery electric zero-emission buses, which is exciting. And then wanted to highlight Juneteenth. Beginning this year, very exciting, TriMet will honor and recognize Juneteenth as an annual paid agency holiday. And hopefully at next month's board meeting, we will hear a little bit more about this particular day and why it's just so important for all of us to honor and recognize. We also heard about some of the amazing STIF, the State Transportation Improvement Fund projects that have really taken underway. So really excited to report that for June, we are planning to distribute 4,000 summer passes to our high school students in all three areas. So Clackamas, Washington, Multnomah County. Really big shout out to Amparo Augusto from the TIAC team for really coordinating this, getting the word out to the school districts. I have also heard that we will also be working a lot with community-based organizations as well, serving young people. So yes, John has been also on top of that and sharing some information in the chat as well. So really great to just, for students to be able to take more public transit. And this is also streetcar as well, that they can take to go to work and go to activities during the summer. And then in July, the low income fare participants will receive 1 month free of fare. And we also have an expanded access transit funds, which will continue to provide support to our low-income seniors, folks with disabilities, and to our veterans. We also heard, like many of you, about the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. Heard a really in-depth presentation about it. We heard from community members today sharing some of their concerns and feedback, and that community feedback process will continue. So we hope to hear more. And then let's see. And then we also heard a really great update on TOD, which is our transit-oriented development policies and procedures. As some of the board members may remember, this is really, an opportunity for TriMet to take a look at all of our parcels and all of our land that we have and see if we can develop multi-use buildings and housing and services to better serve communities. So we heard from Guy and his team around just updates on potential sites that they're exploring. There is a draft. They are in the process of developing a draft TOD plan, and information on that will be available to the public. And I do believe that there will be also a board briefing and more education around this plan over the summer. And then last but not least, TIAC is planning to hold our sort of first ever, I think, retreat in June, on June 14th. It will be held virtually, and the purpose of the retreat is really to kind of reset a little bit. There's been some members over the last couple of years that have joined, they have gone. So it's really just an opportunity for TIAC to revisit our charter, really kind of look at what are the main goals and priorities that that not only TriMet, but community and community members really want to take on. So I want to thank Lee, Tristan, and Ray for sort of volunteering their time to develop the agenda with me. And I know we also have TriMet staff, Amparo, Martin, John, giving a lot of shout outs today for helping me create that agenda. So we will hear more in June when I do the report. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Director Way. And Director Gonzalez, do you have a question?
No, I just didn't lower my hand.
Oh, okay. I don't see any hands raised. So that was our last report from the board. And so now it's time for us to turn to the general manager for his monthly report. General Manager DeSuve.
Well, thank you, President Simmons. Good morning, everyone, board, staff, and the public. Thank you for being here today. This morning, we will be sharing timely information on a couple of things. Our April ridership report, We have a giant milestone that I want to talk a little bit about, update you on our operator shortage, our recruitment efforts, the latest on COVID-19. I'm going to reflect on the 5-year anniversary of the deadly attack on Max and the outpouring of community. I'm going to touch on Juneteenth as a holiday for TriMet. I will share positive news about TriMet's multicultural bus wrap program. I'm going to give you an update on a crossing improvement project on Powell Boulevard, and then I will let you know about a partnership that TriMet is strengthening with our friends at Explore Washington Park. So let's start off with some positive news regarding April ridership. TriMet provided 4.3 million rides for the month of April. It was the first month since March of 2020 where the average weekly ridership on TriMet exceeded 1 million rides. While I invite you all to pause and appreciate the milestone, we are down greatly from the pre-pandemic levels. April ridership was up 24% over April of last year, 2021. However, it was down more than 46% from April of 2019. So now turning to the update on TriMet operator shortage and our ongoing recruitment and hiring efforts, we have some positive developments here to talk to you about. But first, we still need hundreds of more operators to restore our service to pre-pandemic levels. Our operator shortage has now leaked into our MAG service. And while our transportation division works hard every day to cover every bus and MAG's run, we are seeing canceled trains and more canceled buses due to the operator shortages. However, though, let me tell you what we are doing. Staff throughout the agency, they're working very hard to address the shortage, including finding new opportunities to support our existing operators, really acknowledging their hard work of them coming to work and doing their job and improving morale. With that, there are financial incentives, including a new starting wage at $25.24 an hour, and also a $7,500 hiring bonus. And I can tell you, we are seeing more people applying currently. In fact, TriMet, we just hosted a unique hiring event last week that gave bus operator candidates a chance to apply for the job, attend an orientation, interview, and also walk away with a conditioning job offer. So we estimated that TriMet HR staff extended approximately 100 conditional offers to applicants at that event. And I just want to stop and really thank Angela Burns-Brown and her recruitment team, Scott, Page, and a remainder group of people who from HR that participated. In addition to the bus operators, we also had openings in our maintenance division. And we had a sizable number of people who turned out interested in those positions as well. For TriMet, this was an all hands on deck effort with employees from transportation, so thank you, from maintenance, and our public affairs divisions, which pitched in to assist our HR team members with the hiring efforts. We considered the event a tremendous success and another tool in our recruitment and hiring toolkit that will be instrumental as we continue to be focused and determined on overcoming our staffing challenges. So now let me turn back to the virtual meeting that we are attending this morning due to an increase in COVID cases and hospitalizations. There are a renewed recommendation about wearing masks. Multnomah County's public health now is recommending masks be worn inside again, including on transit. And the CDC recommends masks on board as well. We have shared those recommendations with our employees and also with our riders. Next, I want to take a moment here and I want to reflect back on a devastating moment in Portland and the TriMet history. Tomorrow marks the 5th anniversary of a horrific attack on a MAX train as it approached the Hollywood MAX station. 2 men lost their lives that day, and a third was seriously wounded standing up for others. We as a city and an agency are forever touched by not only the hateful act of that day, but the outpouring of love and community in the days afterwards. So my heart goes out to the survivors of that event, the families of those lost, our employees who responded to the scene, and to all of those who came together and chose love over hate. While no public event is planned for this, I ask everyone to please take a moment tomorrow and reflect in your own way as we proceed forward. Now turning to the day that honors racial equity and freedom. Last year, President Biden signed a bill into law to make Juneteenth or June 19th a federal holiday, and Oregon Governor Brown followed up by making it an official holiday in Oregon as well. I'm very proud to say that beginning this year, TriMet will recognize Juneteenth as an annual agency holiday. Juneteenth commemorates the day in 1865 when people enslaved in Texas finally learned the Civil War was over and that they were free. So by observing Juneteenth, we renew our commitment to correcting past injustices and refocus our efforts on the values that unite and unify us as Americans. As Juneteenth this year falls on a Sunday this year, the holiday will be observed on Monday, June 20th. We will be providing regular transit services this year. We will be assessing demand to determine service levels in the future. I would also like to take a moment to recognize an agency effort that was recently honored by the American Marketing Association, Portland's division. Our 2021 Multicultural Bus Design program, which we've continued this year, was awarded the Best in Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, as well as the Best in Engaged Brand Community. Special buses featured designs honoring historic figures and leaders of different races and was tied to the National Months of Cultural Observation. This year, the buses are featuring works from artists of different races, cultures, as a nod to the 25th anniversary of TriMet Public Arts Program. I just want to thank Mr. Carr for coming to the board and making comments. I want to provide an update now about the crossing improvements at Southeast Powell and 79th Avenue that TriMet has been trying to get underway with our partners. The South Tabor Neighborhood Association has been asking about the project, which is a priority to the neighborhood as well as TriMet. So let me give just a little bit of background. In 2016, Metro's Powell Division Transit and a development project defined the locally preferred alternative for the Division Transit project route. As part of that, the program identified other projects in the Powell District corridor to improve safety and access to transit. This included a number of bus stops and crossing improvements on Powell Boulevard, which is managed by Audit. Using statewide transportation improvement program funds, TriMet is implementing some of these improvements. This is a multi-jurisdictional effort and involving several road authorities. So we are working closely with our partners at PBOT, ODOT, and the city of Gresham. And I do want to tell Mr. Carr that TriMet is the lead. We are taking the lead on this here, and we will be at Powell and 79th Avenue. This coordination is particularly complex. Here's two separate projects that intersect there. PBOT Backway project intersects and TriMet's crossing improvements. So initially, PBOT and TriMet planned to implement each project separately. However, ODOT expressed concerns about the project coordination. That led to an extended review process, resulting in new designs and an intergovernmental agreement that TriMet will be delivering the crossing project and the bank improvement. So we're going to get a lot of movement now. The team is we're kind of moved into the lead. We're gonna run the project, and there'll be more information that we will be following up. Currently, the required agreement between the agencies is being reviewed. outlining the funding and construction responsibilities. And once the funding is secured, TriMet will resubmit update plans to both PBOT and ODOT. And then we are currently working with our real estate property department to really finalize the easement documents. So as you can see, there's been this, this project has been in planning for several years, but challenges between jurisdictions on planning and permitting, as well as added staffing issues related to the COVID-19 pandemic, has delayed construction. So I've had a direct conversation with staff. We're ready to take the lead. They are actively trying to move this project forward, and we'll have more information as we move forward to the board.
Mhm.
And then finally, I would like for you and the board to know about an exciting partnership between TriMet and Explore Washington Park. Our organizations have long worked together to ensure safe, convenient, reliable access to Washington Park and its natural beauty. For our spring and summer services, we've made access even better. While our Line 63 has helped people to get around the park for years, we have now extended the route for people to easily travel between the International Rose Test Garden and downtown Portland. Combined with the Washington Park's daily year-round shuttle, which runs inside the park, this creates a direct connection between the Pioneer Courthouse Square and one of our region's most beloved natural attractions. And I do want to just say also to Lee's comments earlier, want to let you know that I'm working with the outreach teams. We are working to set up a time to meet with Getting Together Coalition. And also we're working with Street Trust right now for me to get in front and talk to you and listen to your concerns and issues and have a collaborative conversation about moving things forward. And then finally, President Simmons, I want to just let you and the board know what we're doing with safety and security. Earlier this year, I directed the formation of our executive steering committee to really work on safety and security matters. We're working with the Reimagine group as well. We've made significant progress identifying areas so that we can carefully and deliberately tackle these issues. And the areas that we're looking at is our passengers' safety, our public conduct that's out there, the system condition, external issues, and support matters. We have created a team that's going to be looking at all of those issues that's currently in place. My Chief Operating Officer, Bonnie Todd, will be leading all of the efforts, and on a monthly basis, we'll be giving you updates on what's taking place there. So with that, President Simmons, that concludes my report for this morning.
Thank you, General Manager Dessou. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Yes, Director Wade.
Thank you. General Manager, that was a great report back. So thank you so much. I just have a question, and it could be just a process question around some of the comments that I believe Mr. Carr with his neighborhood association raised. Do TriMet board not members, maybe members, but do any of the TriMet staff or anyone in our community engagement team go to those neighborhood association meetings? I'm asking because I feel like I used to work before for the East Portland neighborhood office, and we would have our meetings every month, and then the separate neighborhood associations would meet. And this is just my comment, but I mean, I think that would be also a really great way, if we haven't already, to be present to provide these updates in person or virtually if they're meeting, and sort of again continue to get some of those questions that folks like Mr. Carr have been raising. So I understand the complexities of, all the different multiple jurisdictions that manage our roads, and it's a lot. So I understand where we are at with our process and trying to get some of those agreements in place. But I just think for the sake of community transparency, and also just, building a relationship, right, with some of those neighborhood leaders, us being there, going to their meetings, is important.
Well, Director Wade, thank you for that. I can tell you that our public affairs team is engaged. We do attend meetings as needed, And our outreach has been focused on the businesses that's been affected. But I've had a conversation with John Gardner just recently, along with JC, and we will be leading this effort and being out in front of all of these meetings.
Okay, I don't see any more hands raised. Well, Director Edwards, I do see your hand raised.
Thank you, President Simmons. My question, General Manager DeSue, and thank you very much for that very comprehensive report. Do we know, or have we been able to get any idea on what the really reluctance is for the opportunities to work for TriMet as an operator? Because I mean, the wages are good, the benefits are good. Now we're offering, even a higher wage than previously, and with the signing bonus. And I just want to know: do we know what is at the heart of the reluctance to come on board for these really good jobs, good career opportunities?
Well, I can tell you there. Great question, Director Edwards. I really appreciate that. So I sit on the board as a board member for the American Passenger Transportation Association. This problem that we're seeing here in Portland is experienced in every single city throughout the United States right now. I think one of the major things right now is a combination of several. One is schedules, when people work, when they don't work. I think COVID had a big situation, and whether people wanted to come back in the public and operate during that time frame. I think safety and security is another issue that's out there that we're working through from that standpoint. We are working very collaboratively with the union about looking at our contract and how can we get more people here to work with each other and establish those partnerships. I think there's a myriad of things. I think there's generational issues that are going on right now. And then I think the great resignation. I think people just decided that I'm not coming back to work. I'm going to take a little bit of time off right now from that standpoint. So we got our HR. We have all of our employees really engaged. This is our key priority for the organization, is to be able to staff up so that we can reinstate service back to pre-pandemic levels. And it's critical. We're throwing everything at it. We're addressing some of the safety concerns that's there, and we're really talking to people. But I have great hope that this will too pass and change as we move forward. We just need to continue to tell our story, what we're doing, all of the great things that TriMet is doing for the region and for the public. And I think that we'll have people eventually come back to us.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you very much, General Manager DeSue. So now it's time for us to go to the consent agenda and move into our resolutions. And the items on the consent agenda, as we know, are considered routine and may be approved by the board in one blanket motion. And today we have three. We have the approval of the minutes of our April 27, 2022 meeting. We have a resolution directing that the reading of all ordinances be by title only. And then we have one resolution 22-05-30 authorizing an increase in the contract authority for construction manager general contractor services for the Division Transit Project with Raymore Construction. Before I ask for a motion, are there any board members that would like anything removed and moved into the regular resolution area? Not hearing any, then I will entertain a motion to approve the items contained in the consent agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Director Edwards. And is there a second?
Second.
I didn't hear who that was.
Director Lewis.
Oh, thank you. There were two people at the same time. Thank you, Director Lewis. It's been moved and seconded. Does anyone wish to make any comments before we vote? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right. Next, we're going to move into some resolutions that don't appear on the agenda. Resolution 22-05-28, honoring the Chief Financial Officer and Executive Director for Finance and Administrative Services, Dee Brookshire. Mr. General Manager, your comments.
Again, good morning, Board. President Simmons. We have 2 employees today that we would like to recognize. And I really ask the board and the public to join us in recognizing the achievements and the contributions of these 2 retiring executives,
Right.
both Dee Brookshire and Steve Witter. Just a quick explanation, and then I'm going to have President Simmons take it back over. Dee has served TriMet, our employees, the region, with 8 years of dedicated service as the Executive Director of Finance and Administrative Services. Steve Witter is the Executive Director of Engineering, Construction, and Planning, and he has provided 21 years of dedicated service to TriMet, our employees in the region. Dee, Steve, thank you. Thank you for your services, and really thank you for everything that you've done for TriMet. So, President Simmons, back to you.
Yes, we're going to move on these separately. So I'm going to read the resolution that you have on the screen for you, and then I will ask for a motion on Resolution 22-05-28. Resolution of the Tri-County Metropolitan Transportation District of Oregon, honoring Chief Financial Officer and Executive Director for Finance and Administrative Services, Dee Brookshire, for her leadership and dedication. Whereas the Tri-County Metropolitan Transportation District of Oregon, known as TriMet, and its Board of Directors wish to honor Chief Financial Officer and Executive Director for Finance and Administration, Dee Brookshire, for her 8 years of committed service to this agency. And whereas Dee Brookshire has brought over 20 years of public and private sector finance experience to TriMet in 2014 and quickly established a strong finance and administrative services team, fostering a cohesive work group through systematic and strategic organization and direction. And whereas Dee Brookshire's tenure, she helped establish and develop TriMet's procurement and supply chain management and risk management departments, yielding more systematic approach and process to agency financial planning and outlook. And whereas Dee Brookshire has wisely led more than 130 division employees and expertly cultivated leaders of the 5 departments of her division. Those are financial services, budgets and grants, fair revenue and administrative services, procurement and supply chain management, and insurance programs. Whereas under Dee Brookshire's leadership, TriMet set bond rating history, becoming the first special tax-backed transit agency to achieve a AAA rating from Moody's in 2015, and then Standard & Poor becoming the only special tax-backed transit agency to achieve a AAA rating from Moody's and Standard & Poor's global ratings, and in 2018 becoming the first transit agency in the nation to receive a AAA bond rating from the top 3 rating agencies, including Moody's, Standard & Poor's, and the Kroll bond rating agencies. And whereas Dee Brookshire worked to ensure the agency maintained its AAA credit rating during the economic downturn associated with the COVID-19 pandemic, extending and showcasing the agency's demonstrated record of financial strength and stability. And whereas Dee Brookshire helped position the agency to issue new and popular sustainability bonds specifically dedicated to providing environmental and/or social benefits, furthering TriMet's commitment to sustainability and its adoption of environmental practices and technologies. And whereas Dee Brookshire has demonstrated true leadership and financial acumen ensuring the stability of the agency and positioning TriMet to make prudent investments, ensure asset management, promote thoughtful system expansion, and improve service for our customers. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the TriMet Board of Directors and the TriMet staff hereby express sincere gratitude to Dee Brookshire for her dedicated leadership and service, and be it further resolved that a framed copy of this resolution be presented to Dee Brookshire as an expression of our heartfelt respect and appreciation. I entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
This is Lori, second.
Okay, so I have, I think it was Director Gonzalez who got there first, and Director Bauman who seconded the motion. So does anyone wish to make any comments?
I would like to make a comment.
Yes, Director Edwards.
Dee has been very special in, I think, in what she has brought to TriMet. Certainly since I've been here, I've had a great relationship with her because and there's a personality to what she does. Usually when folks are, as we say, bean counters or numbers people, they don't bring a personality or any personal relationship. And I think Dee has done that, and it has been very special. And I have one caveat on the that Dee remains on the as a management representative on the pension fund. So because she has been irreplaceable in her responsibility there as well. So Dee, I know you're retiring, but thank you very much for your service. And just from me, I really appreciate what you've really brought and helped me in my responsibilities as well. So thank you.
Director Bauman.
Yeah, thank you, Dee. I just can't say enough about how I value your service to TriMet. You're always patient with all of the board questions and getting us all up to speed. Those of us who aren't necessarily numbers persons, and you know the track record of the bond rating that the agency has achieved, that has really a landmark and has really supported the financial health of the agency. And then we always get such compliments from the TSCC and from our auditors about the tremendous job that your group does in maintaining records and being very upfront and transparent and just meeting all the standards that are set for financial performance for transit agencies. So I wanted to just take a minute and say thank you for all you've done and just wish you all the best in your retirement.
Director Lewis.
Oh, thank you. Dee, you are epic. I do not have a long history with you, but I have to say I ran into Travis about 2 weeks ago, and he was highly commenting on his work with you. So I know you through Travis, and I've heard such wonderful things and much success on retirement. You're not going to have as much fun on retirement as, well, I'm just saying that, as you have here. You will miss us, but I think you are epic, and thank you for all your years of service.
Thank you. And Dee, what I would say to you is you have so definitely earned the right to be able to set your own schedule. You will thoroughly do whatever you want to do and in ways you want to contribute. And it has just been an absolute pleasure to get to know you and to work with you and to have the agency have your leadership. I also see that Ozzy Gonzalez has his hand raised now too. But anyway, I wish you well into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Simmons. I didn't know if there was going to be a roll call before you closed it up or if we had to raise hands. But
you have to raise hands.
Thank you. Dee, I don't get to say this in person, so I'll go ahead and just bring it out in the public forum. I really appreciate the work you've done for TriMet. You've kept a very big ship tight, and you've made it a no fuss, no mess experience for us. And as a testament to all of the feedback we get from the audits and all of the professionals that look at the agency, you've been able to handle this with aplomb, and it's just been a fantastic experience to have you here. You make what is clearly a very complicated world very straightforward to understand in the way in which you handle the finances. I wish you nothing but happiness and joy in the next chapter of your book, and I really grateful that we got to have your talent and your skills here at the agency for the years that we did. Thank you.
Mhm. So do any other board members wish to make any comments? So I'm going to ask for the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Dee. Now we're going to move to resolution 22-0529, honoring the Executive Director of Engineering, Construction, and Planning, Stephen D. Witter. And Mr. General Manager, do you have any additional comments, or would you like me just to read the resolution?
Back to you, President Simmons. I made my comments earlier.
That's what I thought, but I wanted to give you an opportunity. So I will read the resolution, and it goes as follows. Resolution of the Tri-County Metropolitan Transportation District of Oregon honoring Executive Director of Engineering, Construction, and Planning, Stephen D. Witter, for his years of service and leadership. Whereas the Tri-County Metropolitan Transportation District of Oregon, TriMet, and its board of directors wish to honor Stephen D. Witter for his more than 21 years of dedicated service and leadership of TriMet and public transit in the region. And whereas Steve Witter began his service to TriMet in 2001, serving first as an office engineer on the Interstate Max project, and quickly rising in responsibility to direct the design and construction of the West Commuter Rail project, which he helped open in 2009. Whereas Steve Witter forged lasting and beneficial partnerships with leaders of local, state, and federal agencies to help shepherd, advance, and deliver the West Commuter Rail, Max Orange Line, Gideon Pedestrian Bridge, Division Transit Project, and a Better Red project. And whereas Steve Witter led the design team and helped advance critical design elements for the critically important but now deferred Columbia River Crossing project, navigating a complex project structure and positioning TriMet to rapidly resume work when the time comes. And whereas during his tenure, Steve Witter cultivated and supported the development of competent and committed staff, strengthening his division through positive leadership and strategic vision. Whereas Steve Witter has expertly served as executive director since June of 2016, leading TriMet's engineering, construction, and planning division, previously known as the Capital Projects and Construction, as it made many positive contributions to Portland and our region. And whereas Steve Witter's guidance and oversight were critically important to the successful execution and administration of numerous state and federal safety reviews, grant awards, project requirements, financial reporting, and the responsible and productive stewardship of hundreds of millions of public dollars. And whereas Steve Witter has demonstrated strong team guidance, brilliant engineering, planning and construction acumen, innovative project management, and a steadfast dedication to TriMet and the community we serve. Whereas Steve Witter has energetically cultivated and promoted the livability and accessibility of our region, building thoughtful connections, advocating equitable practices in design and construction, demonstrating excellence in leadership, and effectively advancing TriMet's vision, mission, and values. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the TriMet Board of Directors and the TriMet staff hereby express sincere gratitude to Steve Witter for his dedicated service and leadership, and be it further resolved that a framed copy of this resolution be presented to Steve Witter as an expression of our heartfelt respect and appreciation. I entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. This is Lori.
Yes.
Second.
Oh, it's been moved and seconded. Thank you. And does anyone wish to make any comments?
Yes.
I'm trying to see the hands. Director Wade.
Thank you. Hi, Steve. First off, that's a great shirt. Yay for pink. I just want to say I remember some of the stories that you shared. I don't remember a lot of the data or a lot of like the numbers sometimes, but I do remember personal stories. And I remember you saying that you grew up in Portland as a Portland kid, and I don't know why I'm emotional, but TriMet and public transit was something that you always took, and that resonated with me because in 2000 I was also a Portland kid in East Portland, and going to high school in St. Mary's, and then eventually going to Portland State University. So I'll just keep it short. So I feel like there are systems that you have quite physically touched with your service on TriMet, with the things that you have built with your team and your vision. So which really just, again, made our public transit system world class. So I just want to thank you, and thank you for your service, and I wish you a very happy retirement.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you so much.
Director Gonzalez, and then Director Bauman.
Thank you, President Simmons. To add another element of emotion to this, Steve, I'm still peeved that you're leaving. And as a fellow designer, I know full well it's hard to stop the creative energy. Whatever you call the next phase of your life, I'm glad you won't rely on an alarm clock, perhaps, but I can only imagine what a little free time is going to do for your ability to think about ways to apply yourself. So when you're feeling ready to do some transit-oriented development with me, give me a call.
Thank you, Director Gonzalez. Thank you so much.
Director Bauman.
Yes, thank you. Well, Steve, I hope as you go into retirement that you're proud. I hope as you reflect on the fact that how TriMet looks today to the community is thanks to you in large measure, and what could be more satisfying than that? I think in kind of looking back at your career, you've just been a steady hand and a great source of information to the board, and I just really appreciate your depth of knowledge and your commitment to excellence. And I've mentioned before, Steve and I are neighbors, kind of, and I hope to see you at Autos often on Woodstock in the coming years. And again, congratulations on your retirement.
I plan to see you and your family there this summer, Lori.
Okay.
And Director Edwards.
Thank you, President Simmons. Steve, congratulations. And like the others have said, we're going to miss you. I don't know how we're going to replace you. You have been the face of TriMet in so many different places that have been really important to the growth of TriMet and to our well-being and building those relationships. And I hope those relationships continue that you have built. And I think they will because of who you are. And I just want to thank you and congratulate you again. And like I say, you will be sorely missed.
Thank you, Director Edwards.
Steve, what I could say to you, and it actually even applies to Dee, is that one of the signs of successful career is when you can look and say, I have made a meaningful difference in the organization that I've dedicated so many years of my life to. And I mean, you have every reason to feel proud. I know that you view transit as a community builder. You have worked tirelessly to make that a reality. And, I have just always really appreciated just how thorough and how you are in your explanations and making it easy for at least me to understand, what some of the challenges and issues are with the projects that we undertake on behalf of the community. Um, you know, I hope to stay in contact with you as I hope to stay in contact with Dee, and wish you well and see what the future holds for you and your family. You definitely deserve a break and a reassessment of how you want to spend the balance of your life. So best wishes to you.
Linda, thank you so much. And I'll just say it's been an honor to serve.
Thank you. Not seeing any other hands raised, I'm going to call for the question. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations. We're now going to move into the resolution 22-05-31, adopting the fiscal year 2023 annual budget and appropriating funds. Mr. General Manager, your comments.
President Simmons, members of the board, I request your authorization of TriMet's fiscal year 2023 budget, the final step in the process to set the $1.9 billion budget for the fiscal year starting July 1st. The budget prioritized projects to make bus and MAG service faster and more reliable. It accelerates TriMet's adoption of clean fuel technologies. It continues investment in our support for riders with low incomes, and it seeks to restore our workforce. As a reminder, the fiscal year 2023 budget does not include an increase in base fares for the 10th straight year. The budget has been approved by the Multnomah County Taxation Supervision and Conservation Committee, which found TriMet's fiscal year estimates to be reasonable and in compliance with local budget law. With that, I ask for your approval.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Thank you, Director Gonzalez. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Director Edwards. It's been moved and seconded. Does anyone wish to make any comments? Hearing none, I'm going to call for the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Is anyone opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the next resolution, 22-05-32, authorizing a contract with Reese Complete Security Solutions for building access control maintenance, repair, and installation, and intrusion detection consultation services. Mr. General Manager, your comments.
Thank you, President Simmons, members of the board. I ask for your authorization of a contract to provide maintenance, repairs, upgrades relating to building access and alarm monitoring for TriMet facilities, transit centers, and elevators. For this contract, TriMet issued a request for proposal, and Reese, which is also the current contractor, emerged as the highest qualified proposal. The proposed contract would cover 5 years of service at a cost not to exceed $2.67 million. The amount is included in the Safety and Security Division budget. Reese has about 70 employees. The firm plans to use its workforce to perform services under the contract. For diversity, about 16% of the firm's workforce is minority, and more than 17% identifies as female. Your recommended approval of the resolution is recommended.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved, Lori.
Thank you, Director Bauman. A second?
Second, Lewis.
Thank you, Director Lewis. It's been moved and seconded. Does anyone wish to make any comments? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. We're now moving to Resolution 22-05-33, contract modification for Schlecke Northwest Sales Incorporated for replacement vehicles for the lift service. Mr. General Manager.
Thanks again, President Simmons, members of the board. This resolution requires authorization for 84 replacement vehicles for our lift paratransit services. This contract modification is required in part due to the impact of COVID-19 on vehicle production and cost. The board authorized a contract with Schlecke for 124 lift vehicles in 2018. TriMet was able to make purchases for fiscal years 2018 and 2019 under the agreement, but the pandemic interfered with the purchase plans for FY20. Therefore, TriMet anticipates needing 84 replacement vehicles to continue our regular vehicle replacement program under this proposed contract modification. The cost of our lift paratransit vehicles, which are manufactured by Ford for Schlecke, has more than doubled during the pandemic, from about $80,000 per vehicle to more than $170,000. By authorizing the agreement now, we have the ability to act before the state of Oregon competitive price and bid expires. Action now gives TriMet the option to place additional orders with advantageous pricing. Schlecke's workforce is made up of about 70 people, of whom 12% identify as female and 27% identify as minority. The firm plans to self-perform all of the work. The resolution before you today seeks authorization for a contract modification in the amount of $14.3 million for a new total contract amount of $20.7 million. This contract is covered in the capital programs budget, and funding comes from our STIF grants, TriMet bonds funds, and federal funds. And now requesting your approval of the resolution is recommended.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved. Thomas Kim.
Thank you, Director Kim. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
I think I hear Director Way, was that you?
Yeah.
Okay, Director Way seconded. Thank you. Does anyone wish to make any comments before we vote? Hearing none.
Sorry,
Sorry.
President.
Oh, there
I
were.
had my hand.
You know, I wasn't looking. Kathy, Director Way?
Yes. I am just curious, what happens to the lift vehicles we replace? Is there an opportunity for us to work with nonprofit organizations and schools? I'm just curious what happens to the vehicles after we don't need them anymore.
So great question, Director Way. I'm going to bring in our director, Margot Moore, and let her give you a quick overview of what takes place. Margot? You are muted, I think, still.
You are correct. Good morning, General Manager Dessou, President Simmons, and members of the board. My name is Margot Moore. I am the Director of Accessible Transportation Programs. And recently, within the past 2 years, and for your question, Director Way, I created a donation program for those buses. Previously, we were sending them to auction. However, we found that it just made more sense to offer these to those within the community, especially group homes and areas where they could transport those individuals to grocery stores or wherever they may need to go. The program has proved to be very successful. We have already donated in our last procurement, which of course was way back in 2019, we had already donated up to 6 vehicles. We had Black Future Farms, which was a guy that grows his own fresh organic vegetables, and he gives those to lower income riders for free. We've also offered to various organizations that are working with those with disability. So again, any of these vehicles, once they are retired, we will again bring that program out and start looking for those in the community that we can donate those vehicles to.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Director Gonzalez, you had your hand raised. I didn't know if you wanted to speak or not.
Thank you, President Simmons. Coincidentally, my question was the same as Director Wise. I was curious what happened with the old vehicles.
Okay, wonderful. All right. So let's go and have a vote then. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now we move into the next resolution is 22-05-34, authorizing a contract modification with North Coast Electric Company to provide LED lighting fixtures and controls at various TriMet facilities. Mr. General Manager.
Again, thanks, President Simmons, members of the board. This contract modification will allow TriMet to continue LED lighting improvements with North Coast Electric Company. If approved, this contract modification will cover lighting upgrades at 8 transit centers and 40 light rail stations. It seeks authorization for an additional $2.3 million and contract authority for these initiatives, bringing the total contract amount to $3.9 million. As you remember, we've been converting to energy efficient LED lighting in TriMet-owned facilities and properties. The initial conversion at a handful of our properties effectively reduced energy consumption by 60%. For this contract, TriMet is able to take advantage of competitive pricing through a piggyback agreement for the state of Oregon. Funding is included in the Maintenance Operations and Safety and Security Division's FY 22 and 23 operating budget. A quick note on diversity, North Coast has about 740 employees, with about 13.5% identifying as minority and more than 17% female. The firm is self-performing all of the work, and I recommend your approval.
Thank you, General Manager Dessou. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Director Edwards. Is there a second?
Second. Oh,
Was that you, Director Gonzalez?
I just barely beat Director Lewis this time.
Sorry, Director Lewis. All right. Does anyone wish to make any comment? And I had a comment for you, General Manager Dessou, and so does Director Gonzalez. You know, how many other sites are still, after this contract moves forward, how close are we to having all of our sites converted to a more efficient electrical use?
Great question, President Simmons. I do have our manager of facilities, Luann Zoller, that's with us that can be able to answer the questions, and also the executive director of maintenance, Roland Hoskins. If we can elevate both of them into the conversations, they answer the question.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody. Facilities is super excited about continuing with this project. As far as where we're at, we have about half of our transit centers done and about 1/3 of our parking lots done. So we've got quite a few more left to go with transit centers and parking lots. And we haven't done all of our rail platforms yet. So that's why there's a significant increase in this modification for additional money.
Okay. So what it sounds like is that we're going to be seeing additional resolutions in the future for additional funding for this, and it's probably based on funds available. Yeah,
there is a possibility of that. We're identifying these things as we go through a process called crime prevention through environmental design.
Okay.
But this is a great opportunity for us. We've already seen significant improvements in safety and security for our operators and our passengers. One in particular is under the Burnside Bridge at the Skidmore platform. Just the camera work there now is so bright and well lit. And we've seen a lot of comments come in from our operators and just super excited to continue this project. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Luann. Director Gonzalez, you have a question or comment? Nope. All right. Seeing no one wanting to make any additional comments, all in favor, please.
Sorry, Director Simmons.
Oh.
I did. I'm sorry. I was on mute sitting here talking to myself.
Oh, I saw your hand come down, so I thought maybe my question had been your question.
I lowered the hand, but didn't hit mute.
Okay.
I'll make it brief. I simply wanted to, acknowledge TriMet staff for this particular resolution. This is the kind of silent wins that really help move the needle on both the financial side and the sustainability side, and frankly, improved lighting experiences. So I love it when we have wins on all fronts. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. So let's have the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Motion carries. We're going to do one more resolution, and then it's almost been 2 hours, so I know that we're not scheduled to take a break until later, but are you inclined to want to take a break after this next resolution?
Yes,
please.
Okay. So resolution 22-05-35, amending the general manager's level of contracting authority for personal and professional services contracts. Mr. General Manager, your comments.
Thanks, President Simmons, members of the board. This resolution here in front of you would increase the amount of the general manager's delegated authority for personal and professional services. It will bring it in line with the current $1 million authority to execute contracts for goods and services, construction, and property acquisition. This resolution also brings the contracting authority closer to that of peer transit agencies and also in line with the city of Portland, what they do. The resolution also revises some of the text within our statement of the board policy. The statement provides the framework for compliance when executing such contracts. It is regularly and periodically reviewed. Your approval today will help foster agency efficiencies and bring consistency to TriMet contracts, and I do recommend your approval.
Thank you, General Manager DeSue. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Thank you, Director Bauman. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Director Edwards. Does anyone wish to make a comment? Hearing none.
Yes, sorry. I had a question. This is a comment. I mean, I appreciate the premise, General Manager DeSue, on the alignment. I was hoping you could just share for the board and public what this resolution enables staff to be able to do. Aside from the authority, I know we have the opportunity to move more agile. But I was hoping, in your words, you could speak to what prompted this particular action.
Yeah, appreciate that. It gives us the opportunity with services and goods, professional services, to more efficiently and expedite decisions that need to be made instead of waiting for the full month to bring to the board. It also aligns us with all of the other public agencies and municipalities that is around in a region at $1 million that's given to the authority levels to move forward without board approval.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Seeing no other comments, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Let's take a 10-minute break and come back. It's 10:54 right now. Come back about 5 after 11. And we'll resume with the ordinances and then our housekeeping conversation and discussion. And then we will end with a board briefing on the interstate bridge. Thank you. Be sure to mute your phone. Your I'm looking for some of our board members who need to return, and hopefully they'll do so in a few minutes. We have Director Gonzalez has left the meeting. As we know, he was not in town, and so he's actually catching a flight back, so he won't be with us for the rest of the meeting. We'll have to keep him updated on everything that we cover. We're still waiting for one board member. Kimberly, could you check with Director Kim?
Yes, happy to do so.
Okay. Let's see. Why don't we move forward on ordinances? Something is holding Director Kim up. We
I'm back now, sorry.
Oh, great, thank you. We have the second reading on ordinance 367, and it's regarding service changes related to TriMet's January 22 service reduction. I'll ask General Counsel Shelley Devine to read the ordinance by title only.
Thank you, Ms. Board President. Ordinance number 367 of the Tri-County Metropolitan Transportation District of Oregon, adopting January 2022 service reductions and revising route designations. This is the second reading.
Thank you. And Mr. General Manager, following our first reading and public hearing, is there anything you'd like to add to the record?
Thanks, President Simmons and Board. As I mentioned at the April board meeting, this ordinance allows for an extension of our January service reduction, which was an emergency action directly in response to our operator shortage. This ordinance is necessary to help with schedule reliability as we continue to build back our operator ranks. With that, I pass it back to you.
Okay. Thank you, General Manager Dessou. I'll now pose the question to the board. Are there any other questions or further discussion regarding Ordinance 367? Seeing no hands raised, I'll now ask the General Counsel, Shelley Devine, to hold a roll call vote.
Thank you, President. I'll start with Director Way.
Aye.
And Director Edwards.
Aye.
Director Bauman.
Aye.
Director Lewis.
Aye.
Director Kim.
Aye.
And Director Simmons.
Aye.
Ordinance 367 passes unanimously with 6 votes, noting that 1 is absent. Thank you.
Thank you. The ordinance is adopted. Now we're going to move into an opportunity for discussion, and I sent you all an email so that you'd have some time to think about this prior to the meeting. We've concluded the resolutions and ordinances, and before we adjourn the business meeting, we are going to have this conversation about the future of board meetings and how board members attend those meetings. One thing, as I indicated to you in our email, was that we've learned since the pandemic is that hybrid meetings, which combine in-person and virtual attendance, are technologically feasible. The 2 questions to consider for our discussion: do we as a board want to make available a virtual attendance option for board members even when meetings are regularly held in person? If so, do we want to set any parameters around when the board member should attend in person or can attend virtually? Once we have discussed that, let's also discuss under what circumstances a board member's absence from a board meeting or a scheduled committee meeting on which the board member serves is to be considered excused and unexcused. But before we get started, I'm going to ask the TriMet General Counsel, Shelley Devine, to provide us with the legal framework for this discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
President Simmons. And good morning again, board members. As some of you know, last year the Oregon legislature passed House Bill 2560, which amended the public meetings law contained in ORS 192.670. Specifically, in pertinent part, what that did was it provides that when a public agency like TriMet allows for in-person oral testimony from the public, that we also need to make a virtual or an electronic option available as well. And obviously, TriMet has been complying with this throughout COVID and the pandemic because we've been conducting our own board meetings electronically. But I think based on some comments that we received this morning, I think during public forum, they'll be happy to hear that, that we will be equipped to provide that electronic participation option for oral testimony when we again return to in-person board meetings. So that said, ORS 192 and HB 2560 are both silent with respect to whether or not board member participation in board meetings can or should be done electronically. And TriMet's enabling statute, which you're all familiar with, ORS 267, it simply provides that board members will meet monthly at a time and place set by the board. The last time that the board actually passed any kind of a resolution on this issue was 1999, when Zoom was simply how you go fast. So obviously we've had technology, to Director Simmons' point, improve, and we have that capability. So Bottom line, it is really up to the board to decide as to the parameters for whether or not you want to be able to participate remotely or virtually, and if so, under what circumstances. And so with that, I'll turn it back to you again, President Simmons.
Okay, you're gonna provide any guidance in terms of any of the other statutes having to do with the expectation of attendance?
Yes, I thought that was going to be your second issue. I thought you'd said you wanted to discuss this issue first and then move to that.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know if you were going to come back to us again. Okay, so let's just start then with discussing, does the board want to make available a virtual attendance option for board members? Director Way.
I think Director Edwards was up first. I just wanted to.
Oh,
Director Edwards, it's okay. Do you want to go first?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I think that we should have hybrid meetings depending on circumstances. I think that with illness, that certainly could be one of the circumstances that would allow a board member to still attend a meeting without having to leave their residence, so that they, because especially during COVID, if they've been exposed, they may be under quarantine. They could still attend the meeting, even though they're under quarantine. There could be an injury. I've recently had an issue with my Achilles tendon. It hasn't prevented me from being able to physically attend a meeting, but it could, early on it could have. And there's also being out of town. I wasn't able to attend a CAT meeting because I was out of town, and not only because I was out of town, but because I was scheduled to speak at the same time that the CAT meeting was being held. And so there's, I think, some contingencies that we should probably have in that policy, but I think we should have an option so that folks can still attend meetings and not be considered absent because they can't physically be there.
Okay. Director Way and then Director Kim.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to echo some of those comments. I just think that right now, COVID cases are still high. There isn't a week that goes by where I have not heard of someone just in my personal circle or network who isn't dealing with COVID issues. So I think that first and foremost, I think what might make our decision clearer is following some of the health guidance that the county, particularly Multnomah County, has put out, because we are hosting, I think, the majority of our meetings still in downtown. So again, I think, sort of adhering to some of their public health guidance. But I do agree with Director Edwards. I just feel like, if this is something that maybe we can revisit 6 months from now, after we see more of a decrease in numbers, to go back to in person, I'm open to that. But I think between now and just for the next 6 months, I would personally feel comfortable providing having a hybrid option. And I treat this board role, as I'm sure many of you, very seriously. We are all appointed board members to do a public good, and but we ourselves also need to be healthy and well in order to serve our communities and serve the public. So, I know if I'm sick, right? What does your work say? Don't show up to work. Take a sick day. We don't have sick days here. We're all volunteers. But hopefully we could be gracious and understanding with one another to, if someone is sick and they can't make it. But if they're able to participate and be in person, I think that should definitely be an option.
Thank you. Director Kim?
Yes, I strongly feel that a virtual attendance and participation should be an option for TriMet board meetings moving forward for board members and the members of the public. And as for the board members, it should be a default that we all attend in person. However, if there's a preventing circumstance that prevent us from attending a board meeting, such as travel, illness, whatever it may be, such board members should be able to attend virtually. So I'm advocating for virtual being an option, not a default. So it should be a backup option for all of us. And I think we learned many lessons from this pandemic, and this is one silver lining that we can adopt that would make us better moving forward. And lastly, just we all know this, but we all serve at the pleasure of the governor. And to the extent that there's performance issues, our appointments should be revised accordingly. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Director Bauman?
Yeah, I think we're all kind of coming in alignment to a large degree, but that the technology is there that can make it possible for folks to participate in a meeting when they might not have been able to otherwise. And I am thinking of instances where someone might be have an illness or might be traveling. But I also think we all agree that in-person attendance is should be our first option, especially because there are times that we meet. It's frequently that when we meet in person, we're in different parts of the region, and often elected officials come to our meetings and they want to meet us, and we kind of show our commitment to the community by being there physically. So I think that's not a controversial statement either, that our first choice should be to attend the meetings in person. I do think that one way we might address it would be to adopt a statement to the effect that kind of to reflect what Kathy said, this is, and Thomas both, that this is a position of public service, and our meetings we should place a priority on attending in person to the extent possible, and that these meetings should be among our commitments that we have in our lives. This should be take a priority over many other commitments. But at the same time, the hybrid option is available when we need to take advantage of it.
Yeah, so far, I hear as well that there seems to be unity among those of us. I haven't heard anyone detract about it, and which really goes into the next question about parameters around when board members should attend in person or virtually. And we basically said that. I mean, Kathy talked about health guidance, illness, and things like that. So are there any other reasons other than health and I could think of, I know that the statute allows for illness of a family member as well.
Yeah, Linda, I'll just say that I'm reluctant for anyone to kind of police anyone else's reason for participating remotely. So I do think we could kind of state general guidelines, but I don't think we could come up with an exhaustive list.
Okay. General Counsel Devine, did you want to chime in now at this point?
Yes, let me wrap up what I just heard and repeat it back to you, because I'm thinking Director Bauman suggested maybe a statement. What I was thinking is maybe we come back to the board with a draft resolution that wouldn't be final. You guys could comment on it and discuss it, and then we'll finalize it. But would reflect what I've just heard today during your discussion. Thank you for that. But yes, the default, it sounds like everyone is clear that in-person public attendance is in the benefits of the public, and that's what the board wants and should. So that's what the resolution would reflect. But then leaving open that there will be times that board members want to participate virtually, and that there can be a lot of reasons for that, whether it's health or illness or travel. But you're right, we don't have to include an all-inclusive list. We can kind of have a more general statement about that. And then, and I'll bring that back. We will bring that back next month for the board. Does that sound good on that point? Okay. So the second issue that you had raised is it has to do with attendance itself rather than the manner of attending a meeting. And specifically ORS 182.010 and the governor's handbook for boards state that any board member appointed by the governor who fails to attend 2 consecutive board meetings shall forfeit office. And the one exception, as you pointed out, Director Simmons, is if the board member or the family of the board member is prevented from attending by illness. Or the governor has the discretion to decide if there's another compelling reason. But really, it's illness is the only thing that's stated in the statute. So these provisions provide the outer limits of attendance expectations. However, in preparing to update the board's code of conduct, which we haven't updated since 2019, the board president and vice president thought it would be helpful for this board to discuss whether it wants to have any other attendance expectations for board meetings as well as for committee meetings on which a board member serves. So that second question for discussion is, under what circumstances is a board member absence from a board meeting or scheduled committee meeting on which the board member serves considered excused or unexcused? That's the question.
Director Edwards.
Thank you, President Simmons. I didn't want to address that particularly, but on the first draft, on the draft that Shelley is going to be providing for us, could that draft also include that there would be periodic updates to that, such as 3 months, 6 months, a year, whatever the case may be? I think that Director Wade was very brought up a good point in addressing that, because things are going to change, you know, with COVID and its fluctuations and other things that could change as well. So I think it should be something that we're going to update periodically, and that I hope that could be added to the draft.
Okay. Director Bauman, you have your hand raised.
I guess I never lowered my hand, but I'm ready to comment on this second question. So the statute that Shelley was just describing to us says it kind of creates some outer limits, right? It says you can't have more than 2 unexcused absences unless the illness or some other sort of serious exigent circumstance. And to me, really, this hinges on what's excused and what's not excused. And again, I want us to, you know, treat each other as adults as we are, and I don't think we should be policing kind of put too much inquiry into what's excused or not excused. It seems to me that what the statute is getting at is, if you're a no-show, if you show up without giving any advance notice that you won't be there, then that counts as an unexcused absence. And under any other circumstance, if you tell the appropriate people in advance that you won't be there, that's excused, regardless of what the reason might be. So that's how I would interpret it. That it's a no-show prohibition. And I think we could, you know, we could write a policy, or the policy that we're going to potentially approve could say that if you're not going to be there, you know, give as much advance notice as possible, and that would count as an excused absence.
I see Director Lewis, but Director Kim has had his hand up. I don't know if that's still up for a reason, or if he just hasn't taken it down.
Yeah, sorry, never put it down.
Okay, and so Director Lewis.
Thank you. I agree with Lori to actually remove the vague language. No-show is a no-show. We know what that means if it needs to be defined, meaning no contact. And I think that's clear. If we step up as adults and provide a reasoning of a future surgery, I think that that's not, you're not sick, but it does have the potential to change an outcome after surgery of what, you know, to affect any meetings that you're going to. So the list can be endless. But I interpret it the same as Lori, Director that no-show means, and if you have 2 no-shows, then, next steps. But I would put that language in there.
Director Way, any comments?
No, I think I generally agree with what everyone has shared, and again, I think this is maybe an annual thing that we can revisit. Not saying we need to change the policy every year, but just something that we think we just do for good board governance and oversight. But yeah, I think the only thing, or the only maybe just additional lens or perspective that I would bring is, that we are the current board right now, right? So we bring different professional experiences, lived experiences. We are of different ages, and so so I'm kind of thinking, right, like, what if this board changes, and it will change inevitably, when again we get reappointed or there's new folks that come in. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm thinking about, future board members again who might be working parents, or have childcare issues, or you name it. Just again, bring all of their other different life experiences to this position. And I don't have an answer, but I just wanted to raise that up, that thinking of 1999 and that board, and how our board has become more diverse in so many ways, and thinking about 20 years from now, right? Will we have more young people? Will we have more folks with disabilities on this board? And thinking about, again, how we show up could look different.
Yeah.
So just wanted to name that.
Yeah, I think that's where reviewing the policy or the practice on an annual basis really makes a lot of sense. And Director Edwards, did you have anything more you wanted to say? And then I see Director Lewis has something to say.
Just that I agree with the comments that have been made this far. I think it's something that needs to be flexible, evergreen, so that we can revisit it periodically, and certainly so that we're not making a policy that's going to affect future board members that they have to come back and change, unless they're just changing it because of things that have changed in the whole environment. So other than that, no, I think that we're looking at this in the right way, and I think it should be, like everyone has said, we are adults, and we're not missing meetings just because we're going to a poker tournament or something. I think we're if a meeting is missed, it's because someone has a legitimate reason.
Okay.
And as Lori was saying, if it's legitimate, it's legitimate. It's not for me to judge whether it's someone else's legitimacy or not. And I'll just be real candid that another board that I'm on, I know people have missed meetings because their pet has gotten sick, and they had to deal with that, and that was very important to them. And so I'm not the one to judge and say, well, gee, it's a dog, a cat, or whatever. That's legitimate.
Yeah. I agree. I agree on that point. And Director Lewis.
I do not know if this is the correct time to mention this, but the points that we're making has to do with our own behavior. But what about the facilities that we're choosing? I mean, Lori mentioned that, access, for wheelchair and other devices, the ability to have and connect, through Zoom. And I think that carries the ability for us to actually meet, whatever resolution that's put together, but we can all fail if we're choosing facilities that do not comply. So I think along with that, the facility and our choices has a lot to do with it as well.
Thank you. Okay, General Counsel Devine, do
Yes,
you want to
thank you.
summarize?
I do. What I'm hearing is no shows are what should be counted as unexcused absences, and that this can be easily accommodated in an updated code of conduct, which is a dynamic document, won't live for 20 years, will be revisited regularly. Sounds like annually is what the board would like to, and that makes sense because, you know, COVID pressed the pause button on updating the code of conduct since 2019, but typically it's a good practice to look at the code of conduct at least once every year or two and make sure it reflects what the board wants it to reflect. So if we put that into practice, this should be just fine with any future board. If they want to do something differently, they can, but this board will make these edits to the code of conduct, and then the board will have an opportunity to review that before a resolution adopting it and each board member signing it. Thanks.
Right. And I would go on to say that we have some education sessions for the board in June. And one of the things we'll be talking about is a revised board responsibilities code of conduct, as well as ethics, certain ethical kinds of things that you know, has come up because of all of the different ways that we communicate with each other. So stay tuned. You'll have more opportunity to begin to assess all of this in June, which is just around the corner for those of you who are signed up for June 2nd. So if there's no other business to come before the board, then I'll adjourn the meeting. And thank you, General Counsel Devine, for being the note taker for us. So our next regularly scheduled meeting is June 22nd. You know, we will be in touch with you once we know whether that's going to be in person or virtually. We're also looking at other agencies and seeing what they're doing in light of the rapid increase in COVID testing and positive testing. So we have one more item on the agenda for today's board meeting, and that is going to be an update on the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. We've already had our break, so I think we're ready to move into that, General Manager Dessou.
Let me unmute myself here. Thank you, President Simmons. Let me take a moment and say that the I-5 bridge provides a critical connection between Oregon and Washington. The Interstate Bridge Replacement Project is vital to supporting local travel, jobs, trade, and regional economies. The new bridge will include transit to help address our region's climate and equity goals by making it easier for more people to get around without a car. There's been a tremendous amount of work and community outreach done by our IBR team to identify a modified, locally preferred alternative for the new bridge. I want to hand it over to our Executive Director of Engineering, Construction, and Planning, if he's on here, Steve Witter, and I'm going to have him introduce our guests for this briefing.
Sam, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
President Simmons, General Manager Dessou, I'm actually on the trustee number 17 on my way to TriMet World Headquarters. So I'll try to make my comments brief. As Sam sort of indicated how important this project really is to the region and you know, our two states and the West Coast, TriMet's been a partner in this project from the very beginning. And back to the CRC project, which was our first engagement in trying to replace the bridge, TriMet was a significant partner. We had designed a light rail system in the city of Vancouver, and we had worked our way through the federal process. So here we are 10 years later. The project is back. Greg Johnson, the project administrator for the Interstate Bridge Replacement Project, is here along with John Willis, who is the program manager for the consultant team. I suppose this is my introduction and my handoff, Greg. So I'll give it to you in the presentation, and I hope to be back on video here in just a few minutes.
All right, thank you so much, Steve. Thank you, General Manager Dessou, Board President, and members of the TriMet Board. It's our pleasure to be here presenting to you as we are approaching a key milestone for the Interstate Bridge Program. So once again, I'm Greg Johnson. I am the Program Administrator for the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. And let's go to the next slide, please. So this is our overall timeline, and we show this for several reasons. And one of the reasons is that folks are saying that we are rushing to get to an answer. This project has been discussed for over a quarter of a century. The CRC started in 2004, but discussions were going on about the need to replace this bridge 10 years before that. So when folks say we're rushing to get to an answer, that is not correct. This project has been around and known of and discussed for a lot of years. So once again, the program was relaunched after the CRC ended in 2014. The governors dubbed it the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. I was brought on board in July of 2020, and we have been walking our way through the planning and environmental phases. And that gray dot in the middle is where we are currently. We have identified a recommended modified locally preferred alternative, or LPA, that we are now taking to partner boards and councils for input and endorsement to move forward. So if we are successful, and we are successful in front of the Oregon legislature next year in matching what the Washington legislature has done, that will move us in 2024 into a pre-construction or early design phase with actual construction slated to begin in sometime in late 2025, with overall construction being wrapped up in 2032, 2033. So once again, the more delay, the more time that it takes. That time period from when the CRC ended has cost this region approximately $1 billion worth of inflated cost to now get this thing done. So when folks are talking about time truly is money in this instance. We are being very thorough. We're not skipping any steps, but time is of the essence to try and move this thing forward. Let's go to the next slide, please. So once again, here's a picture of Governor Brown and Governor Inslee signing the memorandum of intent. $90 million was dedicated by both states to get us through this planning effort and into the early design phases. So as I mentioned, Move Ahead Washington revenue package allocates $1 billion to fund Washington's share of the construction cost. And we are once again looking to go before Oregon for a similar ask in the 2023 legislative session. One of the things that's different is that this year we have a bi-state legislative committee that provides oversight and guidance, and we meet with them on a regular basis. As a matter of fact, late this winter and this spring, we've been meeting with them twice a month to keep them up to speed on what is occurring and getting their input to move this forward. And this is a list of the partner agencies that are working, and TriMet has been a fantastically important and cooperative partner in moving this forward, along with CTRAN on this transit issue. But we also have Metro, Southwest Regional Transportation Council, City of Portland, City of Vancouver, and both ports are the active partners, transportation partners who are helping guide this program forward. Next slide, please. So this slide is a graphic of what our advisory groups and where input is taken to the program administration. So you'll see at the bottom, we have an equity advisory group and a community advisory group. They're equally represented by individuals and community-based organizations on each side of the river. So we are listening intently to the advice that are coming out of these groups. They also provide input to the executive steering group, which is made up of the 10 principles of the groups on the last slide. We also have other decision makers, such as our federal partners, Federal Transit Administration, Federal Highway Administration, that are funding partners and have oversight responsibilities. We also have the United States Coast Guard and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers that we will be seeking permits from to make this whole project happen. And that top box is the Bi-State Legislative Committee that I spoke of. Next slide, please. So we often get the question, why? What is the need for this bridge to be replaced? So as most of you know, there are two bridges that carry I-5 over the Columbia River side by side. And the oldest of these bridges are 105 years old and the other is 64 years old. And so they have performed admirably for this region, but it is now time to modernize and replace these bridges with a multimodal, modern set of bridges that can support more than just the highway mode. So these are the 6 purpose and need statements associated with the program, and these statements have still exist. They will not get better if we do nothing. So we know that safety, impaired freight movement, and congestion are key. But one of the pressing issues is the earthquake vulnerability that exists for this existing bridge. The oldest of the bridges are built on wood piles and silty soils, and we do not know that this bridge would survive a major earthquake if the Cascadia subduction does happen. So we also know that there are inadequate bike and pedestrian paths. So these paths are narrow, and if you've ever walked or ridden a bike across this bridge, you know that when someone else is coming, you have to skinny yourself up in front of the bridge structure itself right next to traffic to allow folks to pass by. And finally, there is limited public transportation. The governor's put out the challenge of bringing high capacity transit to this corridor. We have existing express bus, which we will be enhancing with this. This will be a multi-phased investment. We will also be looking at bus on shoulder across the bridge, as well as other enhancements to transit to make sure we are meeting all of the needs and goals of the communities for high capacity transit in this corridor. Next slide, please. So we also heard from the partners that equity and climate are key priorities. Our program for a mega project across the country is unique in that we have both a principal equity officer and a principal climate officer that report to me and are looking for best practices and best ways to make this the most equitable mega project, as well as the most climate friendly mega project in the country. So we know that in the past, communities of concern, including BIPOC, folks with disabilities, limited English proficiency, lower incomes, houseless individuals, immigrants and refugees, young people, and older adults have at times been minimized in these type of mega project discussions. So we have focused on that engagement with these communities and getting their feedback as to what they need to see for this program to be equitable. We are also supporting the state climate goals. We have convened all of the climate professionals from the different partner agencies and other entities that have a stake or a goal in climate. And so we are working with them to, once again, make this a project that reduces greenhouse gas emissions and improves air quality as we move forward. The current bridge experiences 7 to 10 hours of congestion, thus is emitting greenhouse gases at a rate that is unacceptable. So we're hoping to solve some of the congestion problem and make sure that we are being respectful of the climate goals of this region. We're also looking to make this infrastructure resilient for future climate disruptions. I know TriMet is well aware of what happened last year when the heat dome settled over this area and had disruptions to service. So we also had disruptions to highway networks because we had buckling pavement during that heat wave. So we are looking at building something that will be resilient for that type of heat or for future sea level rises that will impact the level of the Columbia River. So next slide, please. We are doing a tremendously robust job of community engagement. That 29,000 number probably is up to close to 35,000 by this time. We are reaching out and embracing the community and their input in ways that we believe are unique. We have our project started during the pandemic, so we have had a lot of virtual meetings, but we are now looking at hybrid scenarios to where we can maximize input and still keep people safe as there's still remnants of this pandemic that still exist. We have advisory groups that we have formed to look at specific elements of this project. We had a commuter advisory group that looked at not only motor vehicle commutes, but also looked at transit commuters as well as bike and pedestrian commuters. So once again, this has been a tremendously robust outreach. We've done surveys, we've done polling, and if you would go to our website, we have just a number of different and interesting facts and studies on our website that folks can see that will dash some of the misinformation that is being spread about the program. So next slide, please. So we also, in our outreach efforts, we reached out and provided many grants to participants, to community-based organizations, so they could help us amplify our message and reach into hard to reach parts of the community. So these are some of the many grant participants that have been helping us find those hard to reach parts of the community and make sure their voices are being heard. Next slide, please. So we are now at this inflection point of the program. It is called the Modified Locally Preferred Alternative. And what this is a high-level identification of the pillars of this program, the foundational components, such as what is the high-capacity transit mode? what are the alignment that we will be using for high capacity transit and other improvements. So you will see the next slide will dive deeper into these elements. This also is a part of the Federal Transit Administration process that will make us eligible for capital improvement grant funding as we move forward. And this also is an indication of early agreement by the local agencies and partners to say, yeah, the program is on the right path. So we know that it is not a fully defined alternative. We will be looking at more facts, taking in more information. Right now we're at conceptual. We have to dig deeper to look at impacts that will impact this, the different, not alternatives, but the different design options that we have put forward. We know that it's also not final design. We are probably at 2% design, and we will be looking to refine these concepts as we move forward and focus in on more exact cost estimates as well. We also know that this is not the end of technical analyses. We know that we will be doing more studies, more information gathering to help shape what eventually gets built. And we also know that this is not a final approval. What we are seeking from boards and councils, such as the TriMet board, is to move this forward into the supplemental environmental impact statement process, to dig deeper and put these more detailed elements on the table so folks can see before we get to what is finally going to get built. So let's go to the next slide, please. So this is a graphic showing what the IBR recommendations are for the modified locally preferred alternative. The first thing you will see is that due to the changes from the last go round, we have been able to take into account the desires of the folks who live on Hayden Island. And what we heard from them is that they want a smaller footprint on the island. They want their island reconnected. And because the Port of Portland is no longer looking at developing the west end of the island, we feel that we can make this partial interchange, take this to be further studied and make sure that it can handle all of the traffic that will be moving forward. So right now you see a southbound from I-5 off ramp to Hayden Island and a northbound on ramp to I-5 from Hayden Island. The remainder of those movements will be transferred down to Marine Drive. And we've described this as kind of being like a water balloon. When you squeeze one end of it, the other end bulges out. So the bulge in this case is that Marine Drive becomes a much more complex interchange, much larger with more movements. So the yellow line to the right is actually the extension of light rail from Expo Center, the extension of the yellow line. It will have a station proposed on Hayden Island, and it will cross the river and land and have a station on the waterfront and eventually terminate at Evergreen Street, which is approximately a half a mile north of the river. So this is was the result of a number of conversations between the partners and between TriMet and C-Tran. And this is taking the strengths of light rail and the strengths of C-Tran's bus rapid transit mode and marrying those to create an integrated system that can move the most people in the most efficient and effective way without displacing homes. Right now, the alignment is shown to run right alongside I-5 rather than going downtown Vancouver, because downtown Vancouver's plans have changed since the CRC days. So this is an important element to them that we did not disrupt their downtown development plans. So you will also see there's a light gray bridge that crosses over onto Hayden Island. That is a local access bridge. That it was also a request from the working group that there be a way for folks on Hayden Island to leave the island without getting onto the interstate. So that local access bridge achieves that. And it also carries the active transportation mode across the river. And at the bottom, you can see some of the benefits from this modified locally preferred alternative. You can see that expanding light rail to Evergreen with 4 additional stations gives 3,000 plus residents a half a mile walk to a station. This is an increase of 26% of BIPOC community members who will be within that half a mile, 41% increase in low-income folks who will be within that half a mile. We're also looking at the equity as well as far as job accessibility, and you can see those numbers. 71% of people with disabilities will have, or there will be 71% increase for people with disabilities having access to jobs via transit with this improvement. 73% of the BIPOC community, 68% increase for general population, and 59% for low income. So this is a significant equity win for this region. On the climate side, and this is just looking at the mode shift between folks who would normally be in a single occupancy vehicle trip, now putting them on a on high capacity transit or light rail. You're now reducing 36,000 metric tons of emissions going into the atmosphere, or enough to power 7,000 homes electricity for a year, or saving 89,400,000 vehicle miles in a single vehicle automobile. So there are other things that to combat climate change. So I had not spoke about the auxiliary lanes, which are, once again, auxiliary lanes are the lanes that run between interchanges. They are not general purpose lanes. They are meant to give people room to merge and weave safely, and to not have to stomp on your brakes every time you enter into the freeway. So we are looking at increasing the efficiency of operation by having one auxiliary lane in each direction to be studied to see if it will meet purpose and need. We also are looking at variable rate tolling as a demand management tool to make sure that when there are discretionary trips, these trips can be discouraged during prime hours where congestion will exist. So we're also looking at other strategies such as low carbon emission for construction when this is built and while it is being operated going into the future. So let's go to the next slide, please. So my partner, John Willis, had to excuse himself for another meeting, so I will carry through on the transit investment details. So let's go to the next slide, please. So once again, our recommended transit investment for the IBR program is light rail across the bridge. The alignment is to run adjacent to I-5, and the terminus is near Evergreen. So what we will be studying further are station locations, park and ride locations and sizes, the operations and maintenance costs and how those will be, how they will be shared by this region and how it will fit into the plans of both C-Tran and TriMet. Also, we will be looking for those system improvements to the existing TriMet system to ensure transit speed and reliability as we move forward. So, next slide, please. So this is a map showing where the existing yellow line ends at the Expo Center, and the blue dot shows the new proposed alignment for light rail crossing the river. And you will see north of there, you'll see the C-Tran bus rapid transit lines, and you'll see a convergence at that Evergreen termini. And we're looking to make that Evergreen termini the most equitable and user-friendly for transfers, for connections for folks who are in this region. So this is a commitment from the transit agencies and from the program to get this right and make sure that we are doing all we can to enhance that station and that termini at Evergreen. So next slide, please. So right now we are still looking at different bridge alignments. We have not made a final determination, but we know in either case, we will have a second level. So we will be looking at a 2-bridge option that will have transit as well as the multi-use path underneath the freeway lanes, or we will have a stacked alignment where we will be sharing levels with transit and multi-use and freeway traffic also on top, the southbound vehicles on top as a stacked alignment. So these are still elements that are being looked at. They are not part of the locally preferred alternative, as we still have a lot of work to do to determine the feasibility of either of these bridge alignments. So next slide, please. So the key takeaways that we've heard on the transit investments is that this is a combination system. Before on the CRC, it was light rail going all the way up to Clark College. The C-Trans Vine system now has taken up some of that space and provides service there. So this will be leveraging those connections and with the extension of light rail, also using the existing express bus service, putting that on a shoulder going across the bridge and through the program area. So we know that the light rail extension of the yellow line best integrates existing transit investments in the region. And finally, we know that capacity on light rail allows the program to maximize trips, as light rail can carry more in a single vehicle than bus rapid transit. So the travel times are more competitive for light rail, and light rail investments improve access to jobs to a greater degree than bus rapid transit alone. So once again, this is a combined system, taking the best of each of TriMet's and C-Trans system and marrying those together. So we know that also that light rail is competitive for higher levels of Federal Transit Administration discretionary funding. So let's go to the next slide, please. So other things, the Evergreen Terminus has fewer potential property impacts. It connects directly to the downtown library, the historic reserve, jobs, services, and amenities. It maximizes transfer opportunities. and gives direct connections to several local routes as well as future planned BRT routes in Clark County. The City of Vancouver has been a staunch advocate and has worked with C-Tran to design robust station environments for the Vine system. And they're looking at maximizing that investment rather than scrapping it and having to rebuild. And once again, there's been a great deal of growth on the waterfront, and having a station that connects to the waterfront will also be a driver of usage for light rail as it connects to that robust area. Next slide, please. So we've heard a lot of feedback. Our community advisory group has told us that overall they're supportive of the high capacity transit options and most preferred light rail or combined light rail BRT option. Congestion relief is still a top priority for the community advisory group. Reliability of mode is also important. Folks want to know that once they either take a transit trip, a walking or biking trip, or by motor vehicle, that it will be a predictable trip every day, every time. What we heard from our equity advisory group is that they expressed high interest in accessible independent transit options, including desire for more multiple transportation options that are efficient, reliable, and user-friendly. Their support for infrastructure that promotes high-capacity transit and low-stress active transportation options. So next slide, please. So we did community surveys and their support for high-capacity transit with, once again, a noted interest in light rail. We have, there's desire for greater connectivity to Clark County into Portland. Travel times is what we heard from the community survey. Also, there's a higher preference for transit stations at Expo Center, Hayden Island, the Vancouver Waterfront, the Vancouver Library, and Clark College. And finally, we did a scientifically based opinion poll that sampled folks on both sides of the river, representative populations, and there's strong support among the residents in the entire region for light rail as we move forward. So you can see that the numbers break down that in Clark County, excluding Vancouver, there's still 57% support for light rail. City of Vancouver, 69%. Portland County, or City of Portland rather, 90%. And the Portland metro area, excluding north of the river, is 84%. So light rail is supported in this region. This expansion is very well supported in this region. So next slide, please. So the cost and funding and the next steps are questions that we get very frequently as we're looking to move to the next phase. So let's go to the next slide, please. So we have done a conceptual cost estimate, and we call this the 10,000-foot view of what this program may cost. We took worst case scenarios, best case scenarios, and to create a range of 3.2 to 4.8 billion. Once we have a better idea of what we're going to build, and that will come with everyone agreeing on the locally preferred alternative, we'll be able to give more accurate cost estimates with a smaller range. We also know that we will be pursuing a number of different funding sources. So I spoke about the Move Ahead Washington, which has allocated $1 billion for construction. We'll be in front of the Oregon legislature in the 2023 session with a very similar ask. We also know that we will be looking for federal funding to fill a large part of the funding picture here. With the infrastructure package that was passed last October, and the great job that was done by the delegations in each state. We know that we're going to be eligible for significant federal funding on the highway side of things. So we will be putting those grant applications in beginning in 2023. And also we know that we will be eligible for Federal Transit Administration capital investment grants. So all of those things will be playing together. And the last piece of the puzzle, we will be looking at tolling to fill in what is the delta between the cost and the funding that we can raise. We also know that a bridge of this size will have significant operational costs and inspection costs every year. And so some of the tolling will also be paying for those future operations and maintenance costs. Next slide, please. So variable rate tolling is a principle that all of the partners have agreed that is the best practice for this location. So we know that what the tolling on the bridge will be different than ODOT's proposed toll program on I-5 and I-205 south of the river. So we are working hand in hand with the Office of Urban Mobility to make sure we understand the impacts to traffic and to our bridge. And our tolling objectives for the IBR program are to primarily generate revenue, but also to manage congestion and to improve multimodal mobility in the corridor. So we are expecting that rates will vary by time of day and day of the week based on a set schedule, so the cost is predictable for the traveler coming across the bridge. We're also committed to equitable tolling. So we are looking across the country for best equitable tolling practices. And so we know that our program does not have control over the tolling question as far as policy and rates. That will be determined by the two transportation commissions in concert with the legislatures from each state. And we are looking at what we call pre-completion tolling. That means we will be tolling before the project is complete. And so we could be tolling as early as 2026 to start raising revenue to help pay for the program. So I believe that is my last slide. And, oh, I have one more. So this locally preferred alternative is a huge milestone, but it is only one of numerous steps and activities that have to continue on. The supplemental environmental impact statement is a tremendously public process that we are hoping to enter into with the approval from the boards and councils, as well as the executive steering group and the bi-state legislative committee to move forward into that supplemental process. But we know that we will be doing many more studies, data analysis, developing more plans and details as we are moving this thing forward. So we will be very public with how we are doing this. Once again, we've been very intentional and transparent in our activities, and we plan to continue that transparency as we move forward. So next slide, please. So this is our timeline. We are talking to boards and councils. This is a part of that timeline, this meeting here. Between the 15th and 17th of June, we will have another executive steering group and a bi-state legislative committee. Between June and 22nd and July 13th, we are looking for endorsements from our partner boards and councils, including TriMet. And finally, on the 21st, we will meet again with the executive steering group in the morning and the bi-state legislative committee in the afternoon, seeking the recommendation to move this modified locally preferred alternative into the supplemental environmental impact statement process. So now I think that's my last slide. Next slide, please. Still more. So we will be developing more information as we move forward. Once again, we're looking to begin construction in 2025, but there are a number of things that have to fall into place. Funding, the tolling discussion in front of each legislature, all of those things have to move forward as we're looking to hit that groundbreaking in late 2025, early 2026. So you will be seeing more details as we move forward and answering more of questions that have not been answered because we don't have all of the detail yet to do that. So next slide, please. There. So I will take any questions or concerns that you guys may have.
I'm looking for questions. I guess Director Edwards.
I got a ton of questions, longer than your presentation. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you very much for that very comprehensive presentation. There's a ton of work and so many moving parts and pieces. I was a little concerned, though, with your statement that and LPA that everyone would agree on. I don't see that as even being possible. I mean, certainly you're going to get consensus. I understand that, but getting everyone to agree, that's really not going to happen. I had a question regarding the advisory groups and specifically talking about folks with disabilities and seniors and youth and the houseless. I was interested to know how far do you drill down with the youth, because the youth born today would be 10 years old by the time this project is completed. So are you talking, do you have high school youth that are involved in this, or are the middle school youth involved with this? Because I'm one that always kind of leans that way and thinks that we should have young people because they're the ones that are going to have to live with this, not me. And the houseless, how do you bring the houseless into this environment and give them an opportunity to share their issues and concerns? And I know a lot of time, we're trying to address their issues, but the houses aren't going away anytime soon, and they should be a constituency group that is heard. Another issue that I didn't hear was river traffic. I know that the part of the option here, that certainly the goal is to make sure that river traffic does not disrupt any traffic going along the bridge, the new bridge. It's going to be high enough where river traffic is not going to have any impact at all. But that wasn't mentioned, so I hope that that's certainly a consideration, and it should be, at least addressed so that we know that it is being considered and talked about. I think that's pretty much the question that I have.
All right. So I was taking notes furiously as you were putting your questions forward, Director Edwards. So as far as agreement, we know that we have two sides of the river that at times see themselves distinct and differently. So we are trying to thread a needle and have some commonality that both sides can agree to. So right now, we do have consensus on our executive steering group, which are all those partners we've talked about. And right now, we have folks who are shaking their head in the right direction, saying, yes, the program has done the necessary work. Now, not everybody agrees with every fine detail that we have developed as of yet, but right now we have a consensus building that, yes, they want to see us move to the next level where we'll be developing more distinct answers as we move forward. As far as youth, we've had several outreach opportunities with youth in the area. So we had a high school and college youth journalism conference where we talked to those folks and answered their questions so they could more widespread the message and get their generation thinking about and involved in this. We are, as we look at some of the job opportunities that will come out of a program like this, we know some of the workers that will work on this project right now may still be in junior high school or even elementary school. So we're going to be doing some very robust outreach to youth for job opportunities, for pre-apprenticeship programs, things of that nature. We've had some lunch and learns with houseless advocates to understand how we can be helpful and supportive in their efforts in moving folks from homelessness and houselessness to potentially having careers on programs like this. We know that there is a severe shortage of workers in the transportation, in the construction trades. So we're trying to partner with folks to make sure that we are not overlooking any opportunities where we can embrace some of the activities that are currently going on to help address some of those systemic issues that are occurring in the community. And river traffic, we are having a great conversation with the U.S. Coast Guard. And the Coast Guard had granted a permit the last time for 116 feet, which we have done a new river user survey to understand what type of traffic will be using the river today and in the future. So we are having that conversation. We know that they would like to see a higher bridge, but a higher bridge causes several other problems, such as connecting to Hayden Island and things of that nature. So we're still in the conversation. We eventually will have to get a permit from the Coast Guard that will determine our height. And we're also limited because we have PDX as well as Pearson Airfield. So we can't go too high because we will get into their flight zone. So it's once again, a complex threading of the needle, but we are having those conversations and understanding what is necessary to get this thing to a finish line. So hopefully I answered all of your questions.
Yeah, you did answer all those questions. Thank you very much. What I did fail to mention was the issue of tolling, and I appreciate the creative thought in the tolling. I guess my question would be, is tolling going to be a permanent issue as far as this bridge is concerned? And will tolling impact the Glen Jackson as well? Because I'll just go and take the Glen Jackson so I can avoid the toll, which is going to create a whole lot of congestion over there.
So there's a couple of issues. So our program won't determine the lifespan of tolling. We'll make known the needs of a bridge of this size and what has happened across the country as far as tolling and the cessation of tolling after bonds are paid back. So we'll be putting all of that information forward. But as far as diversion of traffic, with ODOT looking at putting congestion pricing on both I-5 and I-205, an unexpected phenomenon happens is that actually people who currently travel I-205 will now start coming back to I-5 because it's a shorter trip.
Yeah.
So those are all considerations that we've been looking at and studying those different scenarios. But we're working closely with ODOT's Office of Urban Mobility to understand what tolling will look like. And and to understand what any diversions may look like coming from I-205.
Thank you very much.
Director Way?
Yes, thank you, Director Edwards, for all of those great questions. I just have two for Greg, and thank you for your presentation. That was a lot of content, but I think you simplified it and made it very high level, at least for me to understand. My first question was around that slide where it was the two options around the bridge. So whether like transit would go underneath, and then there was like a side-by-side comparison. And so my question is, have we run the numbers yet? The cost analysis of both of those options? And do you feel like one is going to be more expensive than the other, or are we still really too early to even run those kind of initial cost estimates?
We have run some analyses, and one of the problems with the stacked alignment, and what the stacked alignment does, it puts fewer piers in the water, but it also may disallow us from connecting, and it may cause us to have to go further towards Fort Vancouver. We've been having a running conversation with the 11 tribal governments who have asked for consultation on this project, and we are going towards Fort Vancouver is a very large concern of theirs. So we're looking at, okay, are there engineering ways to get around it? We think that both scenarios are in the same ballpark as far as cost, but there's some other difficulties that have to be overcome on each of them to make them work. So those details will be looked at in more depth in the next phase as we understand more of what we're building.
Thank you. And then just a follow up. So I know that there's a transit question, so I'll get to that. But then there's this multimodal, again, just all the different ways, right, that folks can get across the river, which is excellent, and I think will definitely help with our climate goals. Can you talk a little bit more about, in addition to, I'm guessing, a dedicated bike lane or bike lanes, will there be opportunities for pedestrians? I guess I'm just trying to see how expansive we can make this more multimodal and, again, less dependent on cars.
Understood. So we are working with the bike and pedestrian groups to understand the needs and desires to encourage more folks to use bikes or walk across this facility. So we know that having a wider, more well-lit, better signed facility will have more people choosing to use this mode. So we know that under any scenario, we're going to make a significant investment in connecting pathways, sidewalks, and making sure there are no barriers for folks to access this. One of the things that I do, I've walked the bridge. I think I'm going on my 13th time walking across the bridge to understand the issues surrounding trying to travel. I refuse to ride my bike across it because I find it a little scary, but we're working with groups to make sure that this investment will attract folks to say, yeah, I can walk, I can ride, and simply get across and connect to destinations I want to get to.
Thank you. Yes, and I share those concerns too, because of this. It's just scary to have zooming, cars pass by when you're trying to walk or scoot or take bike. But and then just my last comment and question is around. It sounded like, so with some of the estimates around the light rail going across the river, would we? I hope we're going to see a ridership increase, obviously. And is the 3,000, because I saw the 3,000 next to the light rail, picture. Is that daily ridership? Is that total riders, like is that trips? I guess I'm just trying to see what is the, you know, the numerical add, right, in terms of ridership. If we,
So
yeah, go the rep.
Our models are projecting a 11% mode shift from the highway mode to light rail. That 3,000 number is just the number of folks who live within a half a mile walk of the 4 stations that we would be building. So we would be giving that many more folks a easy walk to get to a transit station. So the other way to increase ridership is via park and rides. If folks are coming from a distance, they can park and then get on the system, or through connecting via the bus rapid transit system to connect to light rail. So we show that there is a desire for transit in this corridor. We have to make sure that we are building the right things at the right locations and to get people to those locations. So.
Okay, thank you.
Director Baumann?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that very comprehensive presentation. We heard during the public testimony this morning, a couple of speakers raised an issue that I imagine you're hearing about, which is that the LPA should include one or more than one alternative, and that this avoids some risks, I guess, around litigation or what have you. And the sense is that the alternatives they have in mind would be less ambitious alternatives. What is your response to that idea that there should be more than one alternative?
So if this was, so let me take a step backwards. When the Columbia River Crossing project was active, they achieved a federal record of decision, which is the step that the federal partners take to say, yes, this is worthy of federal funding. So that record of decision was never thrown out. It still exists. So we are in a hybrid situation. We took things that program developed and we built on top of that. We looked at what has changed in the region. So some of the things we know have changed are there is a focus on climate. There's a focus on equity. And so we took those changes into account, and what we've put forward is actually different than what the Columbia River Crossing put forward for a locally preferred alternative. So this is a hybrid situation where generally if this had started over brand new, you're right, there would have been a no-build alternative. There would have been a number of different alternatives. But all of the partners agreed that they did not want to start back at square zero, because there was a lot of work that was done to say, yeah, there's a limited number of ways to cross this river. Some of the things that we hear from folks is, well, you could just seismically retrofit the bridge and walk away. Well, if you do that, you're going to spend probably close to $1 billion to seismically retrofit, and then you don't solve any of those other 6 problems that exist. And folks are saying, well, why do you have to go 5 miles? Because there are 7 interchanges within this 5-mile stretch, and it's those 7 interchanges, folks entering and exiting those interchanges, that are causing a lot of the problems and a lot of the issues that exist in the corridor. So we would be negligent if we didn't look at this as a system, rather just said, well, we're going to plop a bridge in the middle, which would not work, by the way. So yeah, we've heard the discussions and the arguments around making this a simpler, smaller bridge. And those things just don't solve all the purpose and need statements that this region has agreed are problems.
Okay, thank you.
I have one question, and you've been involved with this type of project other places. I know that. But I'm trying to, in my mind, think about how we go about building a new bridge while still functioning in the existing bridge. Is that possible?
It is. So what we were looking at is we would build the new bridge approximately 100 feet further downstream or further to the west of the existing bridge.
Oh, okay.
And that bridge, the existing bridge would stay in service. We would make some traffic switches and move people until we get all of the new bridge built. We would have a shutdown period for a very limited time frame to connect. And then the last thing that we would do is demolish the old bridge.
Okay. Okay.
So it can be done. It's going to be complex, but it can be done.
It was just a curiosity because I've not actually seen that happen. Director Lewis?
I was just going to add the San Francisco Bay Bridge is an excellent example of one staying and one. I actually from the Bay Area and had to go down to ride on the new bridge and look over and see the old bridge and then say goodbye. I don't have a rock from it, but you know, I miss the old bridge.
Yeah, there are mega projects, and that's one of the mega projects across the country, mega bridge projects that we are looking to for lessons learned and how they did certain things that are in common with some of the problems that exist at this location. So nothing is ever a perfect fit, but we can learn good lessons from other areas.
Yeah. Director Edwards, you have another comment?
Yes, thank you, President Simmons. I had one more question. On the north and south ends on the Oregon and Washington side, have you taken a look at how the businesses are going to be impacted to try to mitigate that impact so we don't lose businesses in those areas on either side of the river?
So one of the ways is the maintenance of traffic through here to make sure that we can get people to those businesses on and off the freeway. So we'll be looking very carefully at that. We'll be looking at what our footprint is. So to see how we are impacting and how we can mitigate those type of issues moving forward. But as we get into more detail, we will have some better understanding of our footprint and where the impacts it will have on some of the local businesses and residents.
Thank you.
Okay, well, this has been really informative. And so thank you. Thank you very much. And I don't see any further questions. And so we'll let you go on with your busy day. And I will wish everybody just a great rest of your day and great weekend, Memorial Day weekend. Thank you so much. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.